Chapter 1857 Meeting Enemies Head-On. Back then, with Fortress Master Hong Tian as the leader, Deluge Fortress gathered a total of 13 Almighties, and this power was already extremely shocking. It was only because of the fact that Jian Wushuang had invited Emperor God Lu Guang and Emperor God Zhou Yin along that he had managed to destroy the Deluge Fortress. However, the Abysmal Palace's lineup then was a lot more powerful than the Deluge Fortress. In particular, they had Palace Master Wu Luo, who possessed an impressive amount of fighting capabilities. Palace Master Wu Luo was ranked 25 on the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, and he was slightly more powerful than Emperor God Lu Guang. Moreover, even Jian Wushuang had to admit that this lineup was extremely powerful. The stronger the lineup, the better it will be. Jian Wushuang's voice was ice cold. Now, most of those experts that my lineage of Star are trying to recruit are still looking on from the sidelines, and they are unable to make a decision. That is because, to date, they are still unable to see whether the lineage of Star will survive, and they feel that it is no different from digging their own graves if they were to join the lineage of Star now. However, if my lineage of Star were able to reveal powerful fighting capabilities and show that we are extremely frightening, those experts will then be able to have hope and be willing to join my lineage of Star at this stage. For them to become top experts, all of them had to be intelligent and crafty. For a powerhouse that was about to be destroyed, even if it were to offer good rewards or conditions that could attract them, they would definitely not agree to it. However, if they were to think that the powerhouse might not be destroyed and that it had great potential, that would be completely different. Moreover, they might even join of their own accord. The Abysmal Palace's appearance has given the lineage of Star a chance instead. A chance to reveal to everyone our absolute abilities. Our lineage of Star must definitely win this battle. Moreover, we must have a great victory, and we must use this great victory to frighten everyone. Jian Wushuang's chilly voice reverberated across the area. The three hall masters below were filled with excitement as well. So what if it were the Abysmal Palace? As long as the Abysmal Saint Master was unable to show himself, the lineage of Star had nothing to fear. Palace Master, we have gotten news that the spaceship that the Abysmal Palace is riding on has already appeared near the Cloud Island. I reckon that in half a day's time, they should be able to fight their way to outside the universe galaxy, Hall Master Yuan said. There's no need for us to wait for another half a day. We shall head out right away and meet them head-on, Jian Wushuang said at once. Meet them head-on? Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun looked in the direction of Jian Wushuang. They had originally thought that Jian Wushuang had wanted to use the geographical features of the universe galaxy, a trump card, to his advantage and then fight with the Abysmal Palace head-on. However, Jian Wushuang wanted to take the initiative to fight his way to them. It's just an Abysmal Palace, and there is no need for the lineage of Star to expose a trump card like the universe galaxy. Even if we were to meet them head-on, the lineage of Star would still be able to have a great victory. Jian Wushuang said right away. Meet them. Meet them head-on. The three hall masters nodded their heads earnestly. At once, Jian Wushuang led the two Sir Gods, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun personally along with Jian Yi. As for Hall Master Yuan, he was a weapon spirit and he was unable to go out to meet the enemies. Moreover, he had to stay to take charge of the universe galaxy. In a vast void in the star land, a giant spaceship was traveling forward with shocking speed. In the spaceship, the 18 Almighties of the Abysmal Palace were all gathered inside. There are quite a number of people following behind me. There are even a few Almighties as well. A silvery white armored, arrogant youth who wore an alluring smile was chatting. Those people are all scouts from all the powerhouses. Previously, all of them were worried as to whether the Star Palace Master was really dead. Hence, all of them were extremely fearful and they did not dare to act recklessly. And now, my Abysmal Palace has become the first to take action for them, a green-clothed young lady said. The first to take action? Haha, my Abysmal Palace does not care at all. After all, in front of absolute abilities, everything else is non-existent. The arrogant youth was filled with disdain. All the powerhouses of the Sanctuary Alliance were worried about the Star Palace Master. However, the Abysmal Palace did not care at all as they had the Abysmal Saint Master backing them. Even if the Star Palace Master were still alive, they would dare to fight their way in right away. Among those scouts, there should be someone from the lineage of Star, right? My Abysmal Palace has done things this time around in a way that attracts a lot of attention. Hence, the lineage of Star has definitely gotten the news a long time ago. After knowing that my Abysmal Palace is coming, the people in the lineage of Star are probably so shocked that they are trembling in fear, the arrogant youth sneered. Don't underestimate the lineage of Star, especially that Sword Emperor. After all, back then he killed the 13 Almighties including the Fortress Master Hong Tian in the Deluge Fortress with violent techniques, the green-clothed young lady said. Humph, he only managed to destroy the Deluge Fortress due to the presence of Emperor God Lu Guang. As for Sword Emperor's own abilities, he is merely a peak Emperor God. This time around, when my Abysmal Palace has come personally, who would dare to help him to go against my Abysmal Palace? Moreover, even if he were to invite Emperor God Lu Guang over again, it would be fine. With Palace Master here, what is a mere Emperor God Lu Guang considered to him? The arrogant youth snorted coldly. You're right, the green-clothed young lady nodded her head as well. Their eyes then happened to look in the direction of Palace Master Wu Luo at the same time, and their eyes were filled with respect. Just then, an ancient silver spaceship came from the void in front, and the large number of Almighties in the Abysmal Palace realized it at once. This is Sword Emperor's spaceship? The Almighties in the Abysmal Palace were stunned. They had planned to fight their way into the base of the Lineage of Star. However, who could have expected that before they could reach the base of the Lineage of Star, the Lineage of Star would actually take the initiative to come out? Haha, the Lineage of Star's people are really extremely stupid. Even though they knew that we were coming, they did not stay in their base obediently and stop us with all their might with the aid of the Great Formation. Instead, they took the initiative to come out? Are they sending themselves to death? The arrogant youth was the first person to laugh loudly. The Lineage of Star is not this stupid, right? Could it be that they wish to negotiate or lower their heads to the Abysmal Palace? Negotiate? Lower their heads. Hee, that is highly possible. Let's go and take a look. Many experts of the Abysmal Palace wore a smile and walked out of the cabin. In the vast void, the two spaceships had stopped moving and they confronted each other with a huge distance in between them. The large number of experts of the Abysmal Palace had already come out from the spaceship and appeared at the void. As for the Lineage of Star, only Hall Master Gu Xian showed herself. I am Gu Xian from the Lineage of Star. Greetings to Palace Master Wu Luo as well as everyone else from the Abysmal Palace. Hall Master Gu Xian had a modest expression. However, her words and behavior did not contain any form of fear. May I know why all of you have come on my Lineage of Star so abruptly? Why have we come? The large number of experts from the Abysmal Palace laughed secretly. It was obvious that Hall Master Gu Xian asked the question even though she already knew the answer. Chapter 1858 Funny Excuse. Sir God Gu Xian. There was a cold voice. Among the experts of Abysmal Palace, Palace Master Wu Luo in green robe took a stride forward and his sharp gaze with boundless dignity fixed upon Hall Master Gu Xian. I came here today for one person only and he is Jianghu Shuang. The feud between him and Abysmal Palace is deep-seated. Abysmal Palace has to kill him. As long as Lineage of Star hands him over, I will immediately leave. Hall Master Gu Xin's face changed when he heard that. He replied, I wonder when did Hall Master Wu Shuang offend Abysmal Palace? When? Not too long ago he killed Emperor God Fan Yuan and Emperor God Fan Yuan is a man under Abysmal Palace. Palace Master Wu Luo replied coldly. What? Hall Master Gu Xian stunned. Jianghu Shuang who was in the silver spaceship heard and he couldn't help but laugh. Palace Master Wu Luo is so shameless. He uses such a funny excuse. Excuse? It was no doubt an excuse. Emperor God Fan Yuan had been killed when Jianghu Shuang had killed Emperor God Jin Ming who shared great resentment with Lineage of Star. Jianghu Shuang was sure that Emperor God Fan Yuan was a solo expert and he wasn't related to Abysmal Palace at all. It was impossible that he was Abysmal Palace's man. After all, if Emperor God Fan Yuan was Abysmal Palace's man, he definitely would have brought up Abysmal Palace when his life was threatened. But he didn't. It was obvious that Emperor God Fan Yuan was merely an excuse that Abysmal Palace had found. Emperor God Fan Yuan had already died anyway and the dead couldn't bear witness. Abysmal Palace could say whatever they want. Palace Master Wu Luo, Emperor God Fan Yuan was really killed by Hall Master Wu Shuang. However, how could Emperor God Fan Yuan be Abysmal Palace's man? Hall Master Gu Xian questioned instantly. Humph, he is if I say he is. Stop this nonsense. Either Lineage of Star hands over Jianghu Shuang or Abysmal Palace will barge in to destroy Lineage of Star. It's your choice. Palace Master Wu Luo's cold voice reverberated in the sky. However, just as he spoke. Haha, I originally thought Soaring Heaven King Palace was barbaric enough. But it seems now that Abysmal Palace is even better at it compared to Soaring Heaven King Palace. His laughter shook the sky and rang across the universe. As the laughter rang across the universe, Jianghu Shuang, who was on the silver spaceship, got out slowly with an icy look. The moment he appeared, his eyes shot at everyone from Abysmal Palace like lightning. At the same time, his voice with boundless chilliness was heard. Abysmal Palace, right? Let's just say Emperor God Fan Yuan was Abysmal Palace's man. So what? Jian Wushuang already killed him. What can you do about it? As his voice reverberated, not only the people from Abysmal Palace could hear it clearly, the spies who were hidden in the dark sent by all forces, including a few almighties, could hear them clearly. In an instant, it stirred a commotion in the universe. You have guts. An idiot that doesn't know the immensity of the universe. No wonder so many people want to kill him. The experts from Abysmal Palace were furious. Palace Master Wu Luo stiffened and he stared at Jian Wushuang when he roared, "As you're courting death, I will fulfill your wish." They didn't bullshit anymore. The moment Palace Wu Luo's voice stopped, the 18 almighties from Abysmal Palace instantly pounded. Honk, 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 honk. 18 fierce auras spread and pressed forward wantonly. Especially the 3 leading figures, the 3 emperor gods were soaring with killing intention. They were all aiming at Jian Wushuang in the void in front of them. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 figures appeared behind Jian Wushuang at the same time. Looking at everyone from Abysmal Palace, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nieyin looked solemn. Both of you be careful. Jian Wushuang glanced at the 2 people behind him. Don't worry, we will. Hall Master Gu Xian nodded heavily. Jian Wushuang didn't speak anymore but waved and there were instantly 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers that appeared in front of them. The 4 Dao soldiers looked cold and expressionless. There was a chilly gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Die. There was a low bellow and Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Gu Xian, Hall Master Nie Yun and the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers charged forward. Jian Wushuang would naturally bear the brunt of the battle right at the front. The 2 team formations were obviously out of proportion. Suddenly they were going to fight head-on. Dan Tu Luo Xian, the 2 of you team up with me and we shall kill Jian Wushuang first. The rest of you, kill the 2 Sir Gods from Lineage of Star and destroy the 4 Dao soldiers. If you can't destroy the 4 Dao soldiers, just keep them stranded for the time being. When we kill Jian Wushuang and the others, we will figure out a way to take control of them. They will be extremely useful to Abysmal Palace in the future, Palace Master Wu Luo commanded. Yes, the almighties behind him nodded simultaneously. The proud and aloof Emperor God Dan Tu and the green-robed maiden, Emperor God Luo Xian, followed behind Palace Master Wu Luo. Suddenly both parties were fighting together. Die. Palace Master Wu Luo's aura increased tremendously and there was a flame soaring from his body as though he was covered in a layer of flame armor. His body grew to 5 meters tall and he was holding hundreds of millions of Jin hammer with both his hands. The hammer was slammed in the direction of Jian Wushuang. Dong. The void wasn't broken but there were shapeless waves that rippled as though it had hit the surface of the water. However, the ripples contained terrifying power that could injure a Sir God badly. Then, there were more than hundreds of ripples that spread. Humph. Jian Wushuang shrumphed coldly and Blood Mountain Sword was drawn from its scabbard instantly. Reincarnation Sword Principle, the 4th move. The sword was drawn and wielded. It was completed in an instant. The stroke contained boundless reincarnation power. The reincarnation power was based on Jian Wushuang's comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine and he had already reached the peak of the 7th level in Doctrine Palace. Besides, most importantly, the stroke contained Jian Wushuang's terrifying strength. Divine power of a 3rd stage ultimate real god and bloodline power of a 7-star ancient tribe expert. The combination of 2 brought about the strength that was double the power of an emperor god. The terrifying stroke whistled as it slashed. Instantly, most of the ripples that spread were broken while the sword light continued to sweep out. In the end, it shattered more than 100 ripples. You're quite powerful, Palace Master Wu Luo was shocked. Then, the 2 ghostly figures appeared next to Jian Wushuang at the same time. Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian. The 2 Emperor Gods weren't weak in ranking on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. Emperor God Dan Tu was even extremely close to peak Emperor God. Then, the 2 Emperor Gods let their fighting power explode as they went all out. Chapter 1859 Using Your Blood to Warn the World. Jian Wushuang die. Emperor God Dan Tu's face was hideous and his eyes were filled with an infinite amount of murderous intent. Emperor God Dan Tu was a super genius. Be it when he was a universe god or when he was a real god, he was praised as the #1 in his realm. At that moment, he had become an almighty and entered the realm of emperor gods. However, this was not his limit. He still had great potential and he could absolutely become a peak emperor god in the future. Moreover, it was possible for him to rival or even surpass Palace Master Wu Luo. As such, this caused him to feel extremely proud. However, when he knew of Jian Wushuang's existence as well as his accomplishments, he could no longer remain calm. Jian Wushuang's brilliant accomplishments, where he possessed the fighting capabilities of a peak Emperor God even though he was a real god, had caused Emperor God Dan Tu to lose his arrogance. Quite a number of people had once compared him to Jian Wushuang. However, in the end, Emperor God Dan Tu was not even considered a genius in front of Jian Wushuang. This had caused Emperor God Dan Tu to be filled with hatred since a long time ago. At that moment, since he had the opportunity to kill Jian Wushuang, he naturally went all out. Swish! A saber light headed toward Jian Wushuang's head and it was filled with a tremendous amount of hatred. On the other side, Emperor God Luo Xian went all out. Upon seeing that, Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. Boom! A frightening aura of a bloodline burst forth completely and Jian Wushuang's body expanded abruptly. It was not until he had become 100 feet tall that he stopped expanding. The skin of him then had completely changed to black jade and his body surface wore red armor. Moreover, many heads and arms appeared from his body and he had a total of 7 heads as well as 14 arms. This caused him to look unusually hideous and frightening, as if he were an unmatched demon god. For his 14 arms, each of them held a sword and at that moment, the swords were swung out fiercely. Clang, 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 clang. Violent clashing sounds could be heard continuously and every clash was earth-shaking. He had completely unleashed his close-quarter combat abilities and, combined with his own extremely unreasonable power and sword principles, he fought an intense battle with Dan Tu and Luo Xian, the 2 emperor gods at the same time. In the end, he still had the upper hand and the 2 emperor gods were suppressed to the point that they retreated again and again. Fortunately, Palace Master Wu Luo hurried over in time. Boom! A powerful blow from a hammer descended and it tore open the space, generating a great amount of pressure. This caused Jian Wushuang's expression to turn grave and among his 14 arms, a total of 8 of them held swords to block the attack. Bang! With a loud sound, Jian Wushuang's body was sent flying toward the bottom. Die! The killing moves of the 2 emperor gods, Dan Tu and Luo Xian who were by the side, were unleashed and Jian Wushuang swung the swords in his 6 remaining arms with his full power to block their attacks. However, the unreasonable power sent Jian Wushuang flying just like before. Hall Master Gu Xan, Hall Master Shi Yun retreat. While he was sent flying, Jian Wushuang still shouted. Hall Master Gu Xan and Hall Master Shi Yun had teamed up with 4 Dao soldiers to fight an intense battle with the 15 Sir Gods of the Abysmal Palace head-on. As it was 6 against 15, no matter how powerful the abilities of the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers, as well as of the 2 Hall Masters, they were still suppressed. However, fortunately there were no casualties. After hearing Jian Wushuang's words, the 2 Hall Masters as well as the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers retreated right away. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Although Jian Wushuang's body had already retreated from the battlefield, he did not escape. Instead, he stopped at a void that was far away. Hall Master Gu Xan, Hall Master Shi Yun and the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers returned to him in no time. In front of them, the 18 experts of the Abysmal Palace gathered together again. This great battle had actually stopped temporarily. However, it had not come to an end yet. Gu Xian and Shi Yun, how do both of you feel? Jian Wushuang glanced at the 2 Hall Masters behind him. I am still alright, Hall Master Gu Xin's voice was dull. It has been a long time since I fought such an intense battle. Hall Master Shi Yun was extremely cold and stern. Upon seeing that, Jian Wushuang laughed. Our warm-up has come to an end. Next it's time for our massacre. Massacre. The eyes of Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun glowed brilliantly. Kill all of them. Let them know the consequences of provoking the lineage of Star. Kill, kill, kill. The 2 Hall Masters were filled with murderous intent. At the void in front, the 18 experts of the Abysmal Palace had already started to close in on them and Palace Master Wu Luo shouted with an ice-cold voice, Jian Wushuang, you already have no way out. With the Abysmal Palace taking action, it is impossible for you to escape. Moreover, even if you are lucky enough to escape, the lineage of Star will definitely suffer. Alright. What about the Star Palace Master? Even in such a situation he is still unwilling to show himself. Seems like he is really dead? When the scouts who hid at the void nearby and came from all the powerhouses heard those words, their hearts moved. Indeed, the lineage of Star was engaged in a close-quarters battle with the Abysmal Palace head-on. However, there was still no news from the Star Palace Master. Hence, this had confirmed the predictions of the Vientiane Tower from before. However, when Jian Wushuang heard those words, he laughed without any restraint at all, and his laughter resounded across the universe. Ah, what a joke. You really wish to get our palace master to show himself to pieces of trash like all of you? This is really a big joke. Today there happen to be people from each and every powerhouse of the Sanctuary Alliance present. Hence, I will use the blood of the large number of experts of your abysmal palace to tell the world the consequences of provoking the lineage of Star. At the same time that his voice reverberated across the area, Jian Wushuang took out the One Realm Pearl with a flip of his hands. Purple energy burst forth and completely covered millions of miles of void instantly. One Realm Pearl, great formation formed. Upon seeing such a scene, the eyes of the large number of experts of the Abysmal Palace turned grave. They were not unfamiliar with such a scene. They knew that the reason why Jian Wushuang was able to destroy the Deluge Fortress completely and kill Fortress Master Hong Tian on the spot was because of the peculiar pearl that he possessed. With a thought, the pearl would create a formation and it would make it absolutely impossible for Fortress Master Hong Tian to escape. As such, he could only fight like a cornered beast. At that moment, Jian Wushuang unleashed the same move as well. However, what they did not understand was that since there was such a great disparity between their abilities and lineup, what was Jian Wushuang trying to achieve by deploying the Great Formation? Could it be? When they had just thought of that, Jian Wushuang waved his hands abruptly and bronze figures appeared in front of them out of thin air instantly. For these bronze figures, all their bodies were extremely huge. Moreover, be it their physiques or their looks, they were exactly the same as the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers that they had just fought. However, the only difference was that these bronze figures wore bronze armor. Dao soldiers? Bronze-armored Dao soldiers? The experts of the Abysmal Palace were all stunned. They knew about the Dao soldiers. Of course, they knew the differences between a bronze-armored Dao soldier and a silver-armored Dao soldier. Logically, the level of threat of the bronze-armored Dao soldiers was far from being comparable to that of the silver-armored Dao soldiers. However, at that moment, when they saw the bronze-armored Dao soldiers, which had appeared before them, the expressions of all the experts of the Abysmal Palace turned extremely ugly. There was no choice as there were far too many bronze-armored Dao soldiers in front of them. There were so many of them. Looking at it, there was actually a total of 30 of them. Chapter 1860. Level 8. Most of the experts at the scene knew about Dao soldiers. In ancient Mystery Land there were some places with Dao soldiers. Although the Dao soldiers were strong in power and not much weaker than an Almighty, they only knew simple attacks. Hence, to the Almighties at the scene they weren't much of a threat. However, that was when there were very few Dao soldiers. Now there was a total of 30 Dao soldiers. Even if 3 teamed up could only match evenly with a Sir God, they had the fighting power of 10 Sir Gods. In addition to the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers, Hall Master Gu Xan and Hall Master Nye Yun, lineage of stars fighting power at Sir God level weren't much weaker than Abysmal Palace. In actual fact, Jian Wushuang had a total of 100 bronze-armored Dao soldiers but he only took out 30 of them. If he were to take out all of his bronze-armored Dao soldiers, the experts from Abysmal Palace would show even more interesting expressions. Jian Wushuang, is this the final trick that lineage of star has? Palace Master Wu Luo's gaze was cold as he stared at the 30 bronze-armored Dao soldiers but there wasn't much changed on his face. It was only 30 bronze-armored Dao soldiers and it was still within the range of Abysmal Palace's power. Final trick? Of course not. Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips and with his willpower, the 3 Hongjun golden swords suddenly appeared simultaneously and floated before him. Palace Master Wu Luo, you should know that I am the best at the 3 golden swords. Today I shall let them greet you. The 3 golden swords? That's funny, Palace Master Wu Luo smiled in disdain. He had watched the mirror image that showed Jian Wushuang's fight with Fortress Master Hong Tian and the others in Deluge Fortress personally. In that fight, Jian Wushuang's 3 Hongjun golden swords were really eye-catching. Any one of them contained a hit of a peak Emperor God and it was terrifying fast speed. When they exploded in full force they posed a great threat to an ordinary peak Emperor God. However, he wasn't worried about the 3 golden swords at all. You'll know when you try. Jian Wushuang smiled maliciously and there was a boundless space-time power that suddenly swept out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 golden swords that floated in silence were affected by the space-time power. They quivered and shot out ferociously. They appeared in front of Palace Master Wu Luo like 3 bolts of lightning and they shot Palace Master Wu Luo's chest one after another. Palace Master Wu Luo, who looked disdainful earlier, his eyes suddenly dilated in shock. This speed. Palace Master Wu Luo was shocked because the 3 golden lights were too fast. The speed that it displayed was much faster than back then when Jian Wushuang had used it during the fight in Deluge Fortress. With such terrifying speed, even Palace Master Wu Luo was surprised. However, Palace Master Wu Luo, who was on the 25th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, was also quiet in response. Just as the 3 golden lights burst out, he swung the hammer in his hands. The swing was as though it could break the sky directly. It contained terrifying power that could make all Emperor gods feel hopeless. Bang, bang, bang. 3 continuous hits and Palace Master Wu Luo fell back for tens of thousands of miles. He could also feel that his hands were numb. Level 8. Palace Master Wu Luo stared at Jian Wushuang. He could feel the spacetime power that was given out from the 3 golden swords, and the spacetime power was terrifying. Only when one's comprehension towards spacetime doctrine reached the 8th level could give play to such power. Jian Wushuang, a real god, his comprehension of spacetime doctrine had already reached the level 8 in Doctrine Palace? Level 8. How is it possible? Many experts from Abysmal Palace couldn't help but exclaim. Level 8 in Doctrine Palace was the comprehension standard of an ordinary Emperor God. One should know that when Jian Wushuang performed the 3 golden swords during the battle in Deluge Fortress, his comprehension of spacetime doctrine was only at the 7th level in Doctrine Palace, and it wasn't even at the peak of the 7th level. However, with this fierce power and ferocity of Hongjun Golden Sword, he could match evenly with a peak Emperor God. Then, it had only been over 2,000 years since the fight, but Jian Wushuang's comprehension of spacetime doctrine had heightened so massively. Impossible. No matter how talented he is, no matter how ridiculously strong he was, without the assistance of opportunities, it is impossible that his comprehension towards spacetime doctrine could improve so tremendously in 2,000 years. Unless he has been hiding his true power since the beginning. Palace Master Wu Luo stared and his voice became extremely cold. Jian Wushuang, you have been hiding? You only found out now? Jian Wushuang smirked coldly. Just as Palace Master Wu Luo had said, without the assistance of opportunities but merely relied on his personal comprehension, he wouldn't achieve such massive improvement in comprehension towards spacetime doctrine in 2,000 years' time. The reason why the power he had displayed then was different from the fight with Deluge Fortress before was that Jian Wushuang had never revealed his true power. In the 6,000 years he had wandered in the ancient battlefield near Greenfire World, he had received many opportunities. Among them, the biggest opportunity was a miniature cave dwelling. He had comprehended in the miniature cave dwelling for 1,200 years. His comprehension of spacetime doctrine had improved at an unprecedented rate. His comprehension was originally at the peak of level 6 in Doctrine Palace. However, after he had comprehended in the miniature cave dwelling, not only did his comprehension of spacetime doctrine break through to the level 7 in Doctrine Palace, he continued to improve and possess the power to the level 8 in Doctrine Palace. Level 8 was the comprehension standard of an ordinary Emperor God. On top of that, his power and strength were twice as strong as Emperor God. The Hongjun Golden Swords were scary, and also Jian Wushuang's fighting power. He was far beyond anyone's imagination. Palace Master Wu Luo, you should be glad that you are the first who gets to see my peak fighting power all these years. Today, I'll use the blood of the experts from Abysmal Palace to serve as a deterrent to everyone. Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated in the universe slowly. Arrogant. Palace Master Wu Luo humphed coldly. If I am arrogant or not, you shall watch. Jian Wushuang spoke coldly and a bolt of spacetime power swept out. The 3 Hongjun Golden Sword instantly turned into golden lightning. Then, the 3 Hongjun Golden Swords attacked Palace Master Wu Luo, Emperor God Dan Tu, and Emperor God Luo Xian respectively from all 3 different directions. It exploded its top speed, then Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian stared. *T, Palace Master Wu Luo's face grew grave. Although Jian Wushuang's power was far stronger than they had imagined, he was confident that he could match with him and he could withstand the 3 golden swords. He could withstand, but it didn't mean that Emperor God Dan Tua and Emperor God Luo Xian could. Chapter 1861, Jian Wushuang, Greatest Fighting Capabilities. The 3 Hongjun Golden Swords were like 3 written Taoist voodoos, and among them, 2 of them headed toward Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian respectively. It's too fast. Emperor God Luo Xian could not help but murmur. Emperor God Dan Tu's expression was ghastly pale. However, as Emperor Gods, they could not go down without a fight. Hence, they unleashed their techniques to block the attack right away. Clang, clang. 2 heavy clashing sounds could be heard at the same time. The moment Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xiao clashed with the Hongjun Golden Swords, they were sent flying. However, while they were still flying and that they had not fully regained their posture yet, the two Hongjun golden swords shook slightly and attacked again. Oh no! We are in huge trouble. Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian had an extremely shocked expression. Although the attack force of the Hongjun golden swords had risen slightly compared to before, it did not rise by too much and it was still within the acceptable range for the both of them. However, in terms of speed, back then Jian Wushuang had merely unleashed his comprehension of the spacetime doctrine, which was at the 7th level of the Doctrine Palace. Even then, the speed that he had unleashed had already caused them to be extremely frightened. At that moment it was the 8th level. His speed had completely exceeded the acceptable range for both of them. While the two of them were sent flying, they did their best to block the attack. However, there were sounds of clang, clang, clang. Multiple clashing sounds could be heard in succession and every clash caused both their hearts and minds to feel heavy. After clashing many times, the hands of the both of them felt numb. However, the two Hongjun golden swords were still not affected in the slightest bit. Instead, they had already changed into brilliant rays of golden light and appeared in front of both of them. Moreover, they headed for both of their heads right away. Their speed was too fast and they were unable to dodge them in time. However, just then, boom, boom. The space broke open and two big hammers were swung out of it at the same time. They then sent the two Hongjun golden swords flying and got rid of the danger that Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian was in. Palace Master. Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian were looking at Palace Master Wu Luo, who had appeared in front of them, with delight. Both of you please retreat to one side first, Palace Master Wu Luo said. After hearing what was said, Emperor God Luo Xian did not hesitate at all and his figure retreated far away at once. As for Emperor God Dan Tu, he had a ghastly pale expression and he was staring at Jian Wushuang with full of dissatisfaction. Before he had fought with Jian Wushuang, he had still doubted Jian Wushuang. He had thought that he might not be inferior to Jian Wushuang. However, when they had fought for real, especially when Jian Wushuang had gone all out, he realized that although he was an emperor god, he still did not have the right to participate in the battle. That's right. He had no right to participate. If he were to force himself to participate of his own accord, not only would he be unable to help Palace Master Wu Luo, he would become a burden to Palace Master Wu Luo. Dan Tu, please retreat first, Emperor God Luo Xian said. Humph. Emperor God Dan Tu gave a cold snort and he retreated while suppressing the dissatisfaction in his heart forcefully. Moreover, in no time, along with Emperor God Luo Xian, he joined the intense battle by the side. As for this piece of void, only Jian Wushuang and Palace Master Wu Luo remained. Palace Master Wu Luo, do you think that you will be able to handle me alone? Jian Wushuang laughed. With a thought, the three Hongjun golden swords changed magically at the same time. Swish, swish, swish. The three rays of golden light moved again and headed for Palace Master Wu Luo. Palace Master Wu Luo had a cold and stern expression. On his body, a great amount of dim light emerged and it was just like a demon cloud. Although he did not utter a single word, another giant hammer appeared in his other palm. This giant hammer had a powerful aura and it was actually a chaos divine treasure as well. Die. The demon clouds rolled about and Palace Master Wu Luo transformed into a ferocious beast from the ancient past instantly. He then attacked right away with frightening murderous intent. At that moment, his aura rose to its maximum abruptly. A powerful pressure was exerted on Jian Wushuang and this pressure was slightly more powerful than before. He swung the two big hammers in his hands at the same time and the hammers were swung repeatedly, as if they were two lofty mountains that were extremely heavy. The most important thing was that not only were the two hammers extremely powerful, their speed was so fast that it was shocking. With the two hammers attacking madly, they actually managed to barely block Jian Wushuang's three Hongjun golden swords, which were attacking continuously. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked at the scene in front of him with surprise. He had not expected Palace Master Wu Luo to actually be able to stop his three golden swords. As expected of Palace Master Wu Luo, who is ranked 25 in the Heaven and Earth ranking list. What you are unleashing now is probably your strongest fighting capabilities and they are indeed impressive, Jian Wushuang said loudly. Humph, Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are indeed very powerful. However, you are still not good enough to defeat me, Palace Master Wu Luo snorted coldly. Is that so? Jian Wushuang did a strange laugh. After that, with a thought, another ray of golden light rose again. Upon seeing the ray of golden light, Palace Master Wu Luo's expression finally changed. A fourth one? Palace Master Wu Luo was completely stunned. As for Jian Wushuang, he sneered, You are barely able to block the attacks of 3 golden swords. But what if you were to encounter a 4th one? As soon as his words left his mouth, the 4th Hongjun golden sword which had risen shook slightly. After that, it pierced the void instantly. As for its speed, it was not slower than the 3 swords from before in the slightest. Moreover, it contained the same amount of power. Boom, 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 boom. 4 Hongjun golden swords swept past the void and generated ear-piercing sounds. The sounds were terrifying, and the Hongjun golden swords headed to Palace Master Wu Luo again and again. Each Hongjun golden sword possessed the power of a peak emperor god, which was more than enough to kill a Sir God easily. At that moment, 4 of them had teamed up. Even though it was Palace Master Wu Luo, at that moment he was under a great amount of pressure that he had never felt before. He could only grit his teeth tightly and do his best to block the attacks. On the other side, Hall Master Gu Xan, Hall Master Shi Yun, the 4 silver-armored Dao soldiers as well as the 30 bronze-armored Dao soldiers, were fighting an intense battle with the large number of experts from the Abysmal Palace. Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian had entered the battlefield. However, the 2 of them were stopped by 2 silver-armored Dao soldiers each right away. Although the fighting capabilities of a silver-armored Dao soldier were slightly inferior to that of an Emperor God, with 2 of them teaming up, they could still deal with an Emperor God with some difficulty. Moreover, the Dao soldiers' abilities to protect themselves were so strong that it was shocking. Hence, it was absolutely impossible for Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian to destroy them even if they wanted to do. Even with the fighting capabilities of Emperor Gods, they had still come to a deadlock temporarily and they were unable to get away for a period of time. As for the 2 groups of Sir Gods, they were having an intense fight. In this battle, the performance of Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun was unusually dazzling. Boom, boom. Unreasonable power burst forth at once. Be careful. Be careful of Hall Master Gu Xan. Chaos Divine Treasure. It's actually a Chaos Divine Treasure. Moreover, it is extremely powerful. Damn it. At that moment, the 15 Almighties from the Abysmal Palace had extremely ugly expressions. Previously, when Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun had fought with them as a warm-up, the divine weapons that they had used were merely chaos-unique treasures. However, at that moment, the hands of Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun were holding on to chaos divine treasures which were so powerful that it was shocking. Chapter 1862 Suppress. How is it possible? Abysmal Palace has a stronger foundation than Lineage of Star, and we Sir Gods never once possessed chaotic divine treasure. What did Lineage of Star do to deserve this? Their 2 Sir Gods have chaotic divine treasures? The experts from Abysmal Palace couldn't help but exclaim. One should know that chaotic divine treasure was extremely rare in eternal chaotic world. If an ordinary Emperor God didn't have any background or opportunity, he wouldn't get chaotic divine treasure, let alone a Sir God. In eternal chaotic world, Sir Gods who had chaotic divine treasures could be counted on one's fingers. Either these people were lucky or they had powerful background. However, the 2 Sir Gods from Lineage of Star had chaotic divine treasures. Since when did Lineage of Star become so wealthy? With the addition of chaotic divine treasures, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nyein who were originally powerful, especially Hall Master Gu Xian, who was a peak Sir God. When they attacked with 30 bronze-armored Dao soldiers, they could suppress the 15 Sir Gods from Abysmal Palace. Haha, this feels great. Let's continue. Hall Master Nyein was extremely excited. He carried a grey rod and the grey rod gave out an ancient yet vast aura. Because of the grey rod, his overall power increased by 1 notch. Even if he were to fight with an Emperor God Sir God, he wouldn't be fearful. From the bottom of their hearts, Hall Master Nyein was grateful for Jianghu Shuang. After all, the grey rod in his hand and the chaotic divine treasure that Hall Master Gu Xian was using were both from Jianghu Shuang. Jianghu Shuang had obtained many chaotic divine treasures from the ancient battlefield. He told Hall Master Yuan to rope in some experts with the chaotic divine treasures. Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nyein were his people. Jianghu Shuang of course wouldn't be stingy, but gave them the most suitable chaotic divine treasures. In the fight, the 2 of them gave play to their full fighting power. In the 3 battlefields, Lineage of Star had the upper hand in 2. The other one was in a stalemate. Overall, Lineage of Star already had the absolute upper hand. Just then, pust! A head flew off directly when the eyes in the head were wide in disbelief. The scene struck fear into many experts from Abysmal Palace. Sir God Uxn. Be careful. The experts from Abysmal Palace were terrified and furious. Guexan, well done. Hall Master Nie Yun was filled with excitement. The fight had been going on for quite a while and finally, there was an expert who died. The person was from Abysmal Palace. At first, Abysmal Palace had had the lower hand. Then there was a Sir God from their side who had been killed. Hence, they were in an even worse situation. But as the first expert died, the second and the third were definitely not far away. The massacre continued. After Sir God Uxan was killed by Hall Master Guexan, the second Sir God was killed very soon. He was killed by Hall Master Nie Yun and 2 bronze-armored Dao soldiers. Then there was the third one. The remaining experts from Abysmal Palace couldn't stay calm anymore. Everyone looked at Palace Master Wu Luo, expecting to see Palace Master Wu Luo to turn the table around. However, when they saw Palace Master Wu Luo's situation, the experts from Abysmal Palace were dumbfounded. Palace Master Wu Luo had already lost his aloof carriage and appearance of a sect master. On the contrary, his body was unusually in a fix and his face was pale. Although he wielded the 2 hammers with his awl, he was suppressed by the besiegement of 4 Hongjun golden sword. How could it be? The experts from Abysmal Palace found it unbelievable. One should know that Palace Master Wu Luo's position in Abysmal Palace was only second to Abysmal Saint Master. He was an absolute super expert on the 25th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. However, such a super expert was completely suppressed when he fought head-on with Jian Wushuang. D***MN. Palace Master Wu Luo already noticed the surrounding battlefields. He saw that 3 Sir Gods from Abysmal Palace had died one after another. His face grew grave and he felt aggrieved. He felt really aggrieved. He was a peak Emperor God but he was suppressed by Jian Wushuang. If it were to spread it would become a joke. Dan Tu Luoxian, the 2 of you hurry up and rush over to the other battlefield, Palace Master roared. Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luoxian were looked cold. They wanted to shake off the silver-armored Dao soldiers long ago. However, even though the 2 silver-armored Dao soldiers weren't powerful, they kept pestering them and didn't give them any chance to be free from them. Most importantly, the 2 silver-armored Dao soldiers were 2 obstacles that wouldn't break nor shatter. They couldn't do anything about the Dao soldiers. The 2 of them felt helpless when they heard Palace Master Wu Luo. Palace Master Wu Luo. Jian Wushuang smirked coldly and looked at Palace Master Wu Luo. At this moment, you still have the gall to bother with the others. You'd better plan for yourself. Jian Wushuang said, and there was suddenly a billowing divine power that swept out. Not only divine power but also ferocious bloodline power. They concentrated to a brand new level. Jian Wushuang stared at Palace Master Wu Luo as his gaze turned cold. Moon-picking skill. Virum. Divine power and bloodline power exploded entirely. At the same time the boundless spacetime power swept out too. The strongest secret skill of Ancient God, moon-picking skill, relied on spacetime power as well. The higher his comprehension of spacetime doctrine, the fiercer the secret skill when he performed it. Then Jian Wushuang was performing the secret skill with his awl. The void suddenly shook vigorously. Palace Master Wu Luo was originally in a fix because of the pressure from Hongjun Golden Sword. Then he suddenly felt the surrounding universe and the spacetime pressing down at him in madness. The pressure shook heaven and earth. In an instant, his movements were severely hindered. Ancient God's moon-picking skill? Palace Master's eyes dilated and he recognized the skill. He immediately harumphed coldly and a huge spacetime whirlpool swept out. The spacetime whirlpool swallowed everything in the surrounding and wanted to swallow the entire spacetime and the entire universe. With such devouring power, it reduced the effect of the surrounding universe and spacetime towards him, but his speed was still diminishing drastically. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 4 golden lights burst out one after another. Palace Master Wu Luo blocked with his awl. However, he only managed to block 3 of them under the pressure of the universe and spacetime. The remaining 1 hit his body without any hindrance. Chapter 1863 completely defeated. Bam. A heavy clashing sound could be heard and Palace Master Wu Luo was sent flying immediately. It was only after flying for tens of thousands of miles that his body stopped moving. At that moment, his expression became even more ghastly pale and some blood flowed out from the corners of his mouth. It was obvious that the attack moments ago had caused him to be injured. Not bad. Not only do you have a defense armor that is of the level of a Chaos Divine Treasure, your secret skill to defend yourself is extremely powerful. Even with an attack from my Hongjun Golden Sword at its full power, you merely got away with light injuries. Jian Wushuang stared at Palace Master Wu Luo. After that he gave a strange laugh. However, if you were to take the attack a few more times, even though you had a Chaos Divine Treasure level defense armor, you might still be unable to withstand all of them, right? As soon as his words left his mouth, unreasonable divine power and bloodline power were unleashed from Jian Wushuang's body again. Again? Palace Master Wu Luo's expression changed greatly. As Jian Wushuang had said, if it were just one attack, he could still withstand it and he would not suffer heavy injuries. However, if such an attack were to come a few more times, then it would be a completely different story. Bus. The void shook again. After that, the whole universe and spacetime headed toward Palace Master Wu Luo again. 4 Hongjun golden swords were shot out again as well. A similar scene appeared again. This time around, under the attack of the Hongjun golden swords, Palace Master Wu Luo could not help but give a groan. However, the moment he regained his posture, Jian Wushuang took action again and it was still the same move. How is this possible? Palace Master Wu Luo was completely dumbfounded. He had a good understanding of the Ancient God Clan's moon-picking skill. This move was the strongest secret skill of the Ancient God Clan. However, it was not easy to use it as it would deplete one's divine power and bloodline power greatly. For a normal Ancient God, unleashing the moon-picking skill once or twice in one intense battle would cause him to reach his limit and it was impossible for him to unleash it a third time. However, what about Jian Wushuang? He had unleashed the moon-picking skill twice in succession. Despite that, he did not feel any pressure and he was still very relaxed. At that moment he had unleashed it a third time? His divine power and bloodline power was this vast? He did not know that Jian Wushuang was a stage 3 ultimate real god who possessed a total of 100 ultimate divine power water droplets. In addition, there was the king of venomous worms in his body who was helping him to recover with his full power. As such, he could be said to have an endless amount of divine power. As for bloodline power, he possessed the bloodline of Ancient Clan. As such, his level of bloodline was higher than that of the Ancient God Clan. Thus, it would be a lot easier for him to use the secret skills of the Ancient God Clan by using the bloodline of Ancient Clan compared to an Ancient God. Hence, not to mention unleashing it 2 or 3 times, even if he were to unleash it tens of times in succession, he would still be able to bear it. Although he could bear it, Palace Master Wu Luo was unable to bear it. Monster, this Jian Wushuang is absolutely a genuine monster. No wonder even Saint Master is fearful of him and he wanted to get rid of him in advance. I am actually fighting with a monster? Palace Master Wu Luo opened his eyes wide and at the next moment, he made up his mind. Retreat. Everyone retreat quickly. Palace Master Wu Luo's cry reverberated across the whole battlefield and he retreated to the back immediately. Upon seeing that, the eyes of the large number of experts from the Abysmal Palace shrank and they were filled with dissatisfaction. It should be known that they were the Abysmal Palace. Among the large number of big powerhouses in the whole Sanctuary Alliance, they could be said to be the top 3. This time around, they had activated more than 80% of their fighting capabilities with Palace Master Wu Luo leading them personally to fight their way into the lineage of Star. In the end, they were actually defeated by the other party in front of the experts of each and every powerhouse in the Sanctuary Alliance? What a disgrace. This was absolutely a huge disgrace. The moment they retreated, they would definitely be reduced to an object of ridicule in the Sanctuary Alliance. However, even though they knew that this would be the case, they could only retreat. There was no longer any suspense in this battle. Even Palace Master Wu Luo had been defeated by Jian Wushuang head-on. Hence, what else could they do to turn the situation around? The large number of experts from the Abysmal Palace started to retreat at once. However, it was a pity that in such a situation even if they wanted to retreat, they would still need to go through the lineage of Star first. Haha, kill all of them. Hall Master Shi Yun was extremely excited and he gave chase right away without hesitation. Although Hall Master Gu Xen had never said anything, her eyes were glowing with coldness. Her speed was not slow in the slightest and she continued to give chase. Similarly, the Dao soldiers gave chase as well. As for Jian Wushuang, who was at the very front, he was holding his sword in one hand and he was filled with murderous intent. As for the 4 brilliant rays of golden light in front of them, they had already attacked furiously with lightning speed. This very day was the day where the lineage of Star had showed everyone how powerful it was. He wanted to use this battle to completely frighten all the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance. At that moment, even though the Abysmal Palace had already started to retreat, an insufficient number of their experts had died and an insufficient amount of blood was shed. As such, this was far from achieving Jian Wushuang's requirements. Not enough. Not enough people have been killed. Jian Wushuang was glowing with a shrill light that was terrifying and he was like a wild beast that was extremely furious. He was looking in front at the experts of the Abysmal Palace who were escaping madly. Among the three Emperor Gods, it is definitely impossible to kill Palace Master Wu Luo. As for the remaining Emperor God Dan Tu and Emperor God Luo Xian, I can kill both of them. As for my first target, it's him. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and he locked on to one person tenaciously. That person was an arrogant youth and he was Emperor God Dan Tuesday. At that moment, the experts of the Abysmal Palace had already arrived at the edge of the great formation that the One Realm Pearl had formed. Palace Master Wu Luo was at the front. After taking a look at the purple light membrane in front of him, his eyes glowed with a fierce light and he attacked with the two hammers in his hands right away. Boom! Boom! A heavy but ancient sound could be heard and the great formation started to shake crazily. Jian Wushuang's expression changed slightly. He could feel the great pressure that the One Realm Pearl was under. Palace Master Wu Luo's attack power was indeed frightening. If nothing were to go wrong, he would only need to attack the great formation with his full power 3 times in order to destroy it. At that moment he had already attacked it once and he still needed to attack it 2 more times. Before he destroys the great formation, we have to do our best to get the experts of the Abysmal Palace to remain here. Among those 2 Emperor Gods, at the very least, we must get one of them to remain. Kill! Jian Wushuang shouted and he unleashed his moon-picking skill again. The void shook and the universe and spacetime exerted a frightening amount of pressure on everyone from the Abysmal Palace instantly. Although its power was slightly dispersed, it was still alright as Jian Wushuang was so powerful. As such, most of the Sir Gods were suppressed and they were unable to move at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Hall Master Gu Xian, Hall Master Gu Xian and the large number of Dao soldiers threw themselves over madly. Similarly, Jian Wushuang attacked and his eyes were completely locked onto Emperor God Dan Tuesday. Not good. Emperor God Dan Tu's expression turned ghastly pale at once. Rumble. Frightening massacre burst forth again. Palace Master Wu Luo was unable to participate in the massacre immediately. After all, he needed to use his full power to destroy the great formation of the One Realm Pearl. Boom. Boom. With 2 violent booming sounds again, the great formation of the One Realm Pearl was finally destroyed. Chapter 1864. Suffer a crushing hefty defeat. The formation broke. Hurry up and leave. Palace Master Wu Luo broke the formation and immediately shouted. However, when he turned around and saw everything that had happened behind his back, his face changed. No! There was a shrill scream that reverberated in his ears. Before Palace Master's gaze, Emperor God Dan Tu's face was red and the saber that was tightly gripped in his hand dropped. Then there were 2 resplendent golden lights that shot at him. Emperor God Dan Tu looked hopeless. He didn't have any chaotic divine treasure-level defense armor like Palace Master Wu Luo. It was impossible for him to withstand Jian Wushuang's golden sword attack. The 2 golden lights pierced Emperor Dan Tu's head almost instantly and his head was completely smashed. The super genius from Abysmal Palace died on the spot. D***MNit. Palace Master Wu Luo was furious. He had never expected that in the short time that he was resolving the formation by One Pearl Realm wholeheartedly, Jian Wushuang would kill Emperor God Dan Tu with thunderous measures. Plus, not only Emperor God Dan Tu, but the other Sir God experts from Abysmal Palace were massacred mercilessly as well. They were in a wretched situation. When the formation by One Pearl Realm broke, the experts from Abysmal Palace were thrilled. They started fleeing without hesitation. Although Palace Master Wu Luo was furious, he didn't stay but ran away at the first instant. Without the hindrance of the formation by One Pearl Realm, Jian Wushuang couldn't make the experts from Abysmal Palace stay when they started running away. Very soon the experts from Abysmal Palace had disappeared completely. In the void, Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Gu Xian, Hall Master Nye Yun, the 3 of them stood at the far front while the Dao soldiers followed behind them. Watching the experts from Abysmal Palace running away, the 3 of their faces were cold. It's a pity that my One Realm Pearl, although it could become a formation with my will, the power of the formation is limited. Palace Master Wu Luo was powerful and he could break the formation with 3 full-force hits. If the formation could hold them back longer, the Almighties from Abysmal Palace might have been killed. Jian Wushuang was filled with murderous intention and there was a tinge of regret in his eyes. It's a pity. Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nye Yun nodded simultaneously. The 3 of them exchanged a look and then smiled. Ha! Jian Wushuang laughed extremely wantonly. Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nye Yun then laughed too. Although there were many experts from Abysmal Palace that had managed to escape, which they found regrettable, the result was that Abysmal Palace had suffered a crushing hefty defeat after all. Hefty defeat. It was absolutely no doubt a great defeat. During the fight, Lineage of Star had merely had a few of their bronze-armored Dao soldiers damaged. They only needed some resources to recover them. Other than that, they hadn't lost anything. Abysmal Palace had suffered a great loss. Abysmal Palace kept a high profile and came to Lineage of Star before the forces and experts in Sanctuary Alliance. In the end, they suffered a crushing defeat and lost many Almighties. If the news were to be spread, it would stir a great commotion, Hallmaster Guexin said excitedly. It's okay to stir commotion. Most importantly, the fight serves as a deterrent to the others. There was a gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Abysmal Palace sent 80% of their highest fighting power and suffered a crushing defeat. How many Abysmal Palaces does Sanctuary Alliance have? After this fight, the forces and sects would be even more fearful of Lineage of Star. Even if they found out that the Master of Star Palace passed away, they have to reconsider again and again before they do anything to Lineage of Star. Yes, Hallmaster Guexin and Hallmaster Nye Yun nodded heavily. They walked out of Galaxy Universe and took on their enemy in order to intimidate all forces with the fight. They were very satisfied with the result. Come on, let's return. Jian Wushuang waved to put the Dao soldiers away. Then Jian Wushuang and the two Hall Masters brought the exciting result back to Lineage of Star. In the void, far away from the battlefield earlier. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A few figures stopped in the void. The experts from Abysmal Palace who strutted about and gave themselves airs when they barged into Lineage of Star. They were daring and energetic. But then everyone, including Palace Master Wu Luo, was in a fix. They were like stray dogs. Especially many Sir Gods looked terrified and frightened. These Sir Gods were normally high and mighty. Although they had once faced life and death danger when they wandered outside, it hardly happened. That day they had really taken a trip to Gate of Hell. They almost couldn't return. There are so few of us left? Palace Master Wu Luo's face grew in distress. He looked at the people around him and he couldn't help but shiver. The experts from Abysmal Palace looked around and lowered their heads simultaneously. The reason why they lowered their heads was that they were embarrassed. One should know that they had sent out a troop of 18 Almighties in the beginning. Among the 18 Almighties, there were 3 Emperor Gods and 15 Sir Gods. It was a terrifying team formation. But then, with one glance, the people who were still standing in the void were only 9 in total. Yes, only 9 left. There were 2 Emperor Gods, Palace Master Wu Luo and Emperor God Luo Xian. The remaining 7 were Sir Gods. Among the 9 of them who were alive, every one of them was pale and they were injured. As for the other 9 people, they had been killed in the fight earlier. 9 Almighties, including Emperor God Dan too, passed away during the fight. On the other hand, there wasn't any death in the other party. Was it really Abysmal Palace that had such a result? Abysmal Palace, whose overall foundation and power were in the top 3 in Sanctuary Alliance, had been beaten up by Lineage of Star? Saint Master wanted me to kill Jian Wushuang and destroy Lineage of Star along the way. I have to figure out ways to get my hands on the secret skill of Star Palace as well. But now, Abysmal Palace was defeated heavily in the fight. How do I report to Saint Master? Palace Master Wu Luo looked distressed. Not only we couldn't report in, but Abysmal Palace's overall power also diminished. We would even become Sanctuary Alliance's laughingstock for quite a while. Jian Wushuang had Jian Wushuang. This time Abysmal Palace is doomed. We will definitely remember this. In no time I will definitely repay in 10 times, 100 times or even 1,000 times. Just you wait, Palace Master Wu Luo roared and led the experts from Abysmal Palace to leave very quickly. Chapter 1865 Great Presen. Universe Galaxy inside the base of the Lineage of Star. During this period of time, news of the Star Palace Master dying had already spread to the outside world. As for the experts and disciples in the Lineage of Star, they had also heard about the news and they felt restless. However, with Hall Master Yuan reassuring them, there was no trouble. The Lineage of Star was just like before. As for Hall Master Yuan, he was waiting quietly for the results of the battle to spread. During that battle, scouts from all the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance were present. Naturally, the scouts from the Lineage of Star were present as well and there was a large number of them. The course of events in the battle was relayed to Hall Master Yuan immediately. When he knew that Jian Wushuang and his group of people had had a huge victory and that they were on their way back, he heaved a sigh of relief. In no time, Jian Wushuang and the 2 Hall Masters returned to the Star Palace. Haha, let's welcome the triumphant return of our 3 heroes. Hall Master welcomed them, laughing loudly. Jian Wushuang and the 2 Hall Masters laughed heartily. After this battle, our Lineage of Star has revealed a great force of deterrent. Next, Hallmaster Yuan, please go ahead and settle that matter, Jian Wushuang said. Hallmaster Yuan's expression changed. He knew which matter Jian Wushuang was referring to. Previously, before the news of the Star Palace Master dying had spread, the lineage of Star had been doing recruitment secretly by offering many experts who traveled alone attractive deals. Among these experts who traveled alone, some of them were attracted. However, the lineage of Star did not get them to give their answer right away. After the news of the Star Palace Master being dead was spread, these experts who traveled alone hesitated again. After all, it was risky for them to join the lineage of Star at this point of time. Jian Wushuang had known about this a long time ago. Hence, he had never pressed them for replies but instead gave them enough time to consider. It was not until the recent battle where the lineage of Star had defeated the Abysmal Palace head-on and was powerful enough to frighten everyone that he had made it known to those experts that the lineage of Star possessed absolute abilities and confidence to deal with any kind of danger. At this stage they could show themselves for real and officially invite those experts who traveled alone. Hallmaster Yuan, how many experts do you think you can recruit successfully? Hallmaster Gu Xen looked at Hallmaster Yuan. Before the battle with the Abysmal Palace, I had no confidence at all, and being able to recruit about 2 to 3 Almighties was already considered not too bad. However, now, I reckon that I can recruit at least 10 experts who traveled alone and were also at the level of Almighty. Moreover, the numbers might even be more, Hallmaster Yuan laughed. That's great. The eyes of Hallmaster Gu Xen and Hallmaster Shi Yun brightened up. I shall leave this matter to you, Hallmaster Yuan, Jian Wushuang said. No problem, Hallmaster Yuan was extremely confident. While Jian Wushuang was still having a discussion with regards to some matters with the 3 Hall Masters, Jian Wushuang's expression changed abruptly. What's wrong? The 3 Hall Masters looked at Jian Wushuang at the same. Do you remember that after I destroyed the Deluge Fortress, I told all of you that I used the price of 1 Chaos Divine Treasure level armor to recruit that Emperor God Join to the lineage of Star? Emperor God Join agreed to it on the spot. However, he needed some time. And now, Emperor God Join has already arrived outside the universe galaxy, Jian Wushuang said while stroking his nose. Emperor God Join? Emperor God Join has come? Hall Master Yuan and the 2 other Hall Masters were over the moon. After all, Emperor God Join was a genuine Emperor God expert. Although he was not a peak Emperor God, he was definitely a great fighting force to the lineage of Star. Let's go. Follow me and let's welcome Emperor God Join together, Jian Wushuang laughed. Hall Master Yuan and the 2 other Hall Masters naturally followed behind Jian Wushuang. In no time, the 4 of them arrived at the edge of the universe galaxy. Emperor God Join, as Jian Wushuang looked at the unusually evil black-robed young man at the void in front, he revealed a smile. Ha, Sword Emperor! Emperor God Join walked over right away, and after he came before Jian Wushuang, he greeted him kindly. As for the 3 Hall Masters behind Jian Wushuang, he nodded his head to signal to them. After that, he spoke. I have said before that within thousands of years, I would definitely come to the lineage of Star. Now that I have come, I wonder if the lineage of Star and you, Sword Emperor, are still willing to accept me? Of course we accept you, Jian Wushuang laughed apathetically. Emperor God Join, for you to be willing to become a guest elder of the lineage of Star, the lineage of Star is greatly honored by your presence, Hall Master Yuan said. Emperor God Join grinned and said abruptly, Oh right. When I was on my way here, I heard that the Abysmal Palace had fought their way here. What is the situation now? The Abysmal Palace has already retreated, Jian Wushuang said. Retreated? Emperor God Join was surprised. What happened? The Abysmal Palace is a super big powerhouse that is ranked in the top 3 in the Sanctuary Alliance. Moreover, they have been extremely aggressive and it is impossible for them to have a good start but a poor finish. Since they came for the lineage of Star this time around, they would definitely attack you. Strange? And I still hurried here at my fastest speed, hoping that I would be of some help to all of you. Upon hearing Emperor God Join's words, Jian Wushuang's heart twitched. He could tell that Emperor God Join had just happened to head to the lineage of Star. However, after hearing the news about the Abysmal Palace taking action against the lineage of Star, he had made the best use of his speed to hurry over to help them immediately. However, it was a pity that he was too late. Emperor God Join, you are right. The Abysmal Palace never let their enemies off. Since they said that they would take action, they would definitely take action. However, it's a pity that you are too late. Not long ago, my lineage of Star already fought an intense battle with the Abysmal Palace. Moreover, we defeated them, Jian Wushuang said. Defeated them? Emperor God Join was dumbfounded. The lineage of Star defeated the Abysmal Palace head-on? Is this a joke? Could it be that the Star Palace Master took action personally? The Palace Master did not take action. However, the Abysmal Palace has indeed been defeated by us. Moreover, they retreated with a great defeat. This piece of news will probably be made known to you soon, Jian Wushuang said. After hearing what was said, Emperor God Jiuyin was shocked. He then raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang with astonishment. After that, he calmed down slowly. Forget it. It's all good since they have been defeated. Emperor God Jiuyin laughed and looked at Jian Wushuang again. Sword Emperor, back then, when you used a Chaos Divine Treasure level defense armor to recruit me into the lineage of Star, I said that I would look for you after a few years and I would also bring you a great present. Now, it's time for me to fulfill my promise and I have brought you the great present. A great present? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Back then, Emperor God Jiuyin had indeed said that. However, Jian Wushuang was not concerned with it at all. He had not expected Emperor God Jiuyin to actually bring him a great present. I wonder what this great present is? Jian Wushuang questioned while laughing. With his abilities and identity then, normal treasures and opportunities would be unable to attract his attention. Hence, what kind of item would be considered a great present to him? Chapter 1866 Sword Emperor Dugu? With Jian Wushuang's eager expectation, Emperor God Jiuyin flipped his hand and took out a token in sword shape. The token gave out an extremely unique aura. He could tell that it was some kind of token with one glance. This is. Jian Wushuang looked confused. He didn't know anything about sword-shaped tokens. Not only Jian Wushuang but Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nie Yun reacted similarly. Only Hall Master Yuan was surprised when he saw the token. After he took another careful look, he exclaimed, "This is Emperor Sword Palace's Sword Principal Inheritance Token." Emperor Sword Palace? Sword Principal Inheritance Token? Jian Wushuang was surprised. "Your Excellency, you must be Hall Master Yuan from Lineage of Star." Emperor God Jiuyin smiled at Hall Master Yuan. "Your Excellency has good eyesight. You recognize the token with one glance." "You're right. This token is Emperor Sword Palace's Sword Principal Inheritance Token. As for its value, as Hall Master Yuan can recognize it, you should know." Hall Master Yuan nodded heavily. He, of course, knew the price of the token. "A huge present, it is really a huge present," Hall Master Yuan complimented. "Hall Master Yuan, what's going on? What's the origin of the Sword Principal Inheritance Token?" Jian Wushuang asked. Hall Master Wushuang. As Emperor God Jiuyin had yet to verify the death of the Master of Star Palace, Hall Master Yuan still referred to Jian Wushuang as Hall Master Wushuang instead of Palace Master in front of Emperor God Jiuyin. "You should have heard of Emperor Sword Sect, right?" Hall Master Yuan asked. "Of course I know," Jian Wushuang nodded. "Emperor Sword Palace is one of the major forces in Sanctuary Alliance. They are extremely ancient and their foundation is strong. Although the power isn't as fierce as Abysmal Palace and Soaring Heaven King Palace, their positions in Sanctuary Alliance is extraordinary." Hall Master Wushuang, you only know that Emperor Sword Sect is very old but you don't know about its origins. Emperor Sword Sect is actually related to a super expert from the First Era, Hall Master Yuan said. First Era? Jian Wushuang stunned. After ancient times, it had been the First Era. After the First Era collapsed, the Second Era derived from it, which had made eternal chaotic world. Hall Master Yuan started explaining, among the three eras, ancient times were the strongest, followed by the First Era. Ancient time is too long ago and the experts of eternal chaotic world could only find traces of ancient times from the ancient battlefield. However, the First Era is considered rather close to us. Although the First Era couldn't be compared to ancient times long ago, there were many top experts and geniuses, especially some super experts who stood at the peak. Their potential and talent are actually much higher than experts in ancient times. But due to the restriction of the environment during the First Era, they couldn't match evenly with experts in ancient times. In this era there were once many super experts. For example, the higher leader of ancient tribe, Ancient God Emperor, who was a 10-star ancient god, his power was above Great Emperor. Also Emperor White, he was from the First Era as well. Back then he was famous and highly positioned. These two were considered true big figures back in the First Era and they were considered super experts on the peak. However, their powers were merely in the top 10 in the First Era, not the top 3. Jian Wushuang was convinced when he heard that. Ancient God Emperor and Emperor Bai were powerful. Especially as Ancient God Emperor was the leader of Ancient God, a 10-star ancient god. Actually, his power had already exceeded the range of Chaotic Realm, but they couldn't be listed in the top 3 in the First Era. How scary would the top 3 be? The top 3 in the First Era, they were super experts who could truly break the sky and split heaven. Even if they were to be in ancient times, they were extremely talented figures. Ever since the First Era collapsed, the top 3 and many experts in the First Era died. Only Emperor Bai remained alive. Among the 3 super experts, the one on the 3rd place was Sword Emperor Dugu. Hall Master Yuan said. Sword Emperor Dugu? Jian Wushuang stunned. He didn't know much about the First Era. It was also his first time hearing Sword Emperor Dugu's name. However, judging from the name itself, Sword Emperor Dugu was definitely an expert who was good with a sword. Otherwise he wouldn't have the nickname of Sword Emperor. Sword Emperor Dugu had impressive swordsmanship. He was widely acknowledged as the first man in sword principle. It is said that although most of his sword principles were self-invented, his strongest and scariest sword principle was from ancient times. When the First Era collapsed, Sword Emperor Dugu died. However, many years ago when it came to the Second Era, Eternal Chaotic World started and there was a Sir God who happened to obtain Emperor Sword Palace that Sword Emperor Dugu left behind. Emperor Sword Palace contained sword principle and sword intention, and the Sir God happened to be good at sword too. He was the first who entered Emperor Sword Palace and he received the greatest opportunity and advantage. After that, his power increased tremendously and he even broke through and reached Emperor God level. He used Emperor Sword Palace as his base and started Emperor Sword Sect. Then, Emperor Sword Sect started passing down until now, Hall Master Yuan explained. I see, Jian Wushuang understood. He had heard of Emperor Sword Sect long ago, but he had never expected Emperor Sword Sect to be related to Sword Emperor Dugu, who was powerful in the First Era. Then what's this Sword Principle Inheritance Token? Jian Wushuang asked. Sword Principle Inheritance Token is the token to enter Emperor Sword Palace. Although the greatest opportunities and advantages in Emperor Sword Palace were taken by the founder of Emperor Sword Sect, some of the opportunities couldn't be taken away but could only be kept within Emperor Sword Palace. Emperor Sword Palace opens once every 1 million years, and every time it opens, only those who hold Sword Principle Inheritance tokens are qualified to enter. Just like Emperor Sword Sect, although they control Emperor Sword Palace, their men can't enter if they do not have Sword Principle Inheritance tokens. Hall Master Yuan paused and continued, there's a total of 5 Sword Principle Inheritance tokens. Under normal circumstances, Emperor Sword Sect would keep 2 for themselves and distribute the other 3. In the end, the luckier sword experts would get them. They enter Emperor Sword Palace with the Sword Principle Inheritance token and they could receive inheritance of Sword Principle, which was extremely helpful to their swordsmanship. Plus, legend says that if one received sufficient opportunities and possessed talent, he would stand a chance to receive the terrifyingly powerful ancient sword principle that Sword Emperor Dugu controlled. Chapter 1867 Frightening Everyone? I see, Jian Wushuang understood, I am proficient in sword principles. In other words, this Emperor Sword Palace will be of great use to me. That's right. Even to great Emperor-level experts who are proficient in sword principles, the Emperor Sword Palace that Sword Emperor Dugu has left behind would be extremely useful. Hence, it would naturally be even more useful to you, Hall Master Wushuang. Hall Master Yuan laughed. However, this Sword Principle Inheritance token is extremely rare. Emperor God Jiuyin, how did you obtain it? I was able to obtain it as I was lucky, Emperor God Jiuyin grinned. Before Sword Emperor invited me to the Deluge Fortress, I got to know that a Sir God possessed a Sword Principle Inheritance token by coincidence. Back then I was not too concerned with it. However, after I was recruited by you, Sword Emperor, I thought about it. Hence, over the past few years, I found that Sir God and used some methods to obtain this Sword Principle Inheritance token easily. Is that so? Your luck is not too bad, Hall Master Yuan gasped. Emperor God Jiuyin, Jian Wushuang looked in the direction of Emperor God Jiuyin. Thank you very much. I shall accept this Sword Principle Inheritance token. Aha, there is no need for you to be so modest. Although this Sword Principle Inheritance token is valuable, it is still comparable to a Chaos Divine Treasure level defense armor. Emperor God Jiuyin laughed heartily. Oh right. From what I know, the Emperor Sword Palace will open up again in another 300 years' time. If you wish to go there, you had better hurry. In another 300 years' time? Jian Wushuang frowned. With 300 years of time, he would be able to make it in time. However, the most important thing was that the lineage of Star was in great danger. At such a stage, wouldn't he not be able to make time to go there? Hall Master Wushuang, you may set your mind at ease and go. Hall Master Yuan could tell that Jian Wushuang was worried and he laughed immediately. After teaching the Abysmal Palace a lesson for a short period of time, the experts from the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance will probably not have the guts to attack the lineage of Star again. Even if they were to really attack us, it would probably only be after another thousands of years. According to what I know, every time the Emperor's Sword Palace opens, one can only stay inside for 1,000 years' time and you will definitely be able to make it back in time. The only troublesome thing is the Emperor's Sword Sect, as they might not let you enter the Emperor's Sword Palace. What? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. He was confident that he had asked Hall Master Yuan before in the past. Hence, he already knew the big powerhouses that had a grudge against the lineage of Star. For example, the Divine King Island, the Real Martial Arts Divine Church and the Highest Heaven Emperor Mansion all had a huge grudge against the lineage of Star. However, among those big powerhouses the Emperor's Sword Sect was not included. Since there were no grudges between them and Jian Wushuang really possessed the Sword Principal Inheritance Token, why would the Emperor's Sword Sect not let him enter the Emperor's Sword Palace? There are indeed no huge grudges between the lineage of Star and the Emperor's Sword Sect. This is not fake, and at the very least, no experts from either side have died at the hands of the other. Even if there were, both sides do not know about it. However, although there are no huge grudges, there are small conflicts. For example, when Palace Master, Star Palace Master, was traveling in the second lair in the past, he fought with the current Sect Master of the Emperor's Sword Sect for his own benefit. Moreover, he also caused the Emperor's Sword Sect Master to suffer huge losses and he lost all his face in front of everyone. Although this was only a small episode and it was not at the stage where both of them would take action to kill each other, the Emperor's Sword Sect Master still remembered it. Now, since you wish to enter the Emperor's Sword Palace, you definitely have to obtain the approval of the Emperor's Sword Sect first. Perhaps the Emperor's Sword Sect would not take action to attack you, but they would probably make things slightly more difficult for you, Hall Master Yuan said. I see, Jian Wushuang understood. Let's not care about this Emperor's Sword Sect. After all, I still have 300 years of time. During this period of time, I will stay in the lineage of Star and take a look at the reactions of all the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance. If there are really no movements from them, I will go to the Emperor's Sword Sect 300 years later. Alright, Hall Master Yuan nodded his head in approval. Emperor God Jiaoyin, this is the first day where you have become the guest elder of the lineage of Star. I will get people to prepare a banquet immediately, and during the banquet I will announce this to everyone, Jian Wushuang said. Please go ahead. Emperor God Jiaoyin did not stand on ceremony. Under Jian Wushuang's personal guidance, he took a step into the universe galaxy. With Palace Master Wu Luo leading them personally, the large number of experts from the Abysmal Palace fought their way into the Star Land, attracting a lot of attention. However, in the end, before they could reach the doorstep of the lineage of Star, they were defeated by the experts of the lineage of Star who Jian Wushuang led and were forced to escape. Among the 18 Almighties, a total of 9 of them were killed on the spot. Even Emperor God Dan II, an Emperor God-level genius, died in that battle. The moment this piece of news spread, the Sanctuary Alliance burst into an uproar. It should be known that previously, when they had gotten to know that the Abysmal Palace was going to attack the lineage of Star, the experts of all the powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance had thought that it would be the end of the line for the lineage of Star. However, who could have expected the end results to be as such? Moreover, during that battle, the large number of trump cards that the lineage of Star had unleashed had caused the experts of quite a number of powerhouses to be extremely terrified. Those 30 bronze-armored Dao soldiers. Although Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Shi Yun were merely Sir Gods, they actually possessed Chaos Divine treasures? In the end, the most shocking thing had been the frightening fighting capabilities that Jian Wushuang had revealed. 8th level. This Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the spacetime doctrine has actually achieved the standard needed to clear the 8th level of the Doctrine Palace? Even though his level of comprehension of the spacetime doctrine is so high, he still hid it all the while. This Jian Wushuang has really hidden his abilities so deeply. Since his level of comprehension of the spacetime doctrine is so high, the golden swords that he controls will become extremely frightening. Just 3 of them alone were able to give Palace Master Wu Luo a great amount of pressure. With 4 of them, even Palace Master Wu Luo was completely suppressed. When further combined with the ancient god secret skills that Jian Wushuang unleashed, he actually defeated Palace Master Wu Luo head-on. Previously, I thought that it was a bit too much to put Jian Wushuang in the top 30 of the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. However, looking at it now, after this battle, his ranking will definitely rise again. At the very least, he will have a higher ranking than Palace Master Wu Luo. However, I wonder what his ranking will be. Countless experts were chatting enthusiastically. As for those powerhouses who were restless and wanted to attack the lineage of Star, they became quiet again. There was no choice. The results of this battle were something that they had never expected. Originally, they had thought that with the Abysmal Palace taking action personally, it would be enough to force the lineage of Star to its limit and the lineage of Star's situation then would be revealed. However, in the end, after the battle, the lineage of Star had become even more unfathomable. Because, to date, they still did not know how those Tao soldiers and Chaos Divine treasures were obtained. On top of that, they were unable to confirm whether the Star Palace Master was dead or alive. Hence, they did not dare to act recklessly. In no time, the rankings in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list underwent some changes again. At that point, Jianghu Shuang, who was originally ranked 30 in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, was ranked 22. Chapter 1868 Com. On the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, they recorded super experts on the peak of the universe in eternal chaotic world. For the experts on the list, any increase of ranking would require convincing battle achievement. It was extremely difficult. But then Jianghu Shuang had risen from the 30th place to the 22nd place directly. He increased a total of 8 rankings in an instant. Most interestingly, the original 22nd place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list had been Emperor God Tianling from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jianghu Shuang shared great resentment with Soaring Heaven King Palace, but he had never fought with Emperor God Tianling. Then Jianghu Shuang had raised his ranking directly while Emperor God Tianling had fallen to the 23rd place. Of course, regarding Jianghu Shuang's current ranking, the experts in Sanctuary Alliance were doubtful. Some thought that Jianghu Shuang had relied on his 4 Hongjun Golden Sword to suppress Palace Master Wu Luo in the 25th place miserably and his power should be above Emperor God Tianling's. But there were some who thought although Jianghu Shuang's Hongjun Golden Sword was strong, Emperor God Tianling could withstand it directly. Once the 4 Hongjun Golden Swords failed to create great advantage for Jianghu Shuang, Emperor God Tianling could totally defeat him. Both parties had their reasoning but no one could clearly determine who was stronger. Time flew past. In the blink of an eye, 280 years had passed. In the 280 years, eternal chaotic world was calm. The forces and experts who were preparing to pound at Lineage of Star had reined themselves in and no one dared to act hastily. The victory of Lineage of Star in the fight with Abysmal Palace had served as a deterrent. Even Abysmal Palace, who was in the top 3 major forces in Sanctuary Alliance, were defeated by Lineage of Star and suffered great losses. Which other major forces in Sanctuary Alliance had the power and confidence to fight Lineage of Star alone? As for teaming up, the forces and experts considered it before. However, the biggest problem still lay there, which was if the Master of Star Palace had really died. As long as the answer was uncertain, the forces and experts wouldn't dare to join forces. Because once they united to attack Lineage of Star, it would be a decisive battle. By then, if the Master of Star Palace wasn't dead and they started to massacre in madness, the forces and experts would be doomed. During the calm times, Lineage of Star had received an extremely precious chance to gasp for air. In the hall, Jianghu Shuang, Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xian and Hall Master Nie Yin gathered together. As for Emperor God Jiuyin was a guest elder after all. Lineage of Star wouldn't restrict him too much and it was temporarily unsuitable for Emperor God Jiuyin to know the secret in Lineage of Star. Hall Master Yuan, how did the recruitment go? Jianghu Shuang looked at Hall Master Yuan. Not bad. Currently, there are 4 Almighties that made a decision and they are willing to be guest elders in Lineage of Star. Once Lineage of Star is in danger, they will lend a helping hand. Among the 4 Almighties, there are 3 Sir Gods and 1 Emperor God Shenwu. Hall Master Yuan said. Emperor God Shenwu? Jianghu Shuang was surprised. He knew of Emperor God Shenwu. Among Emperor God experts in Eternal Chaotic World, his power could be considered at the bottom. In terms of attack power, he was slightly stronger than an ordinary Sir God. However, he was best at defense power. Not only was his defense power strong, he also knew many kinds of defense skills, secret skills and powers. Although Emperor God Shenwu's power is ordinary, he is truly an Emperor God expert after all. To Lineage of Star, he is also a helping hand, Jianghu Shuang said. Not bad, Hall Master Yuan nodded and he smiled. Actually, Emperor God Shenwu is actually not weak, especially his defense power and body protection power. He is only not too good in strength and close combat skill. He knew that too. Hence, when he was wandering in the 2nd lair and the 3rd lair, and also when he was wandering in Ancient Mystery Land, he took the risk to wander in dangerous places. His goal was to get a chaotic divine treasure level divine weapon that suited him. However, he wasn't very lucky and he didn't get anything. Then Lineage of Star offered to give him a suitable chaotic divine treasure level attack divine weapon, and that made him really happy. He even said on the spot that the divine weapon itself was worth his life. Then, Emperor God Xianwu already came out from ancient mystery land. I reckon he will arrive at Lineage of Star in no time. Emperor God Xianwu and the other 3 Sir Gods who agreed to become guest elders, take good care of them. You can pass them the agreed chaotic divine weapon first, but they have to guarantee that they will lend a helping hand when Lineage of Star is in danger. Otherwise, if take advantage of Lineage of Star but run away during crucial times, that's not something we want, Jian Wushuang exhorted. Don't worry. These experts that I have invited, their reputation are not bad. As they agreed, they shouldn't go back on their words. Plus, when I give them their chaotic divine treasure, I will, of course, set some restrictions, Hall Master Yuan said. That'd be best. Jian Wushuang nodded and then he looked around. In recent years, the forces and experts in Sanctuary Alliance were quite calm. It seems that the fight with Abysmal Palace took great effect. Now, unless Ancient Mystery Land closes and they confirm that the Master of Star Palace has passed away, no one will dare to take action against Lineage of Star. Hence, I will prepare to head to Emperor Sword Sect now. Before I go, I will leave all Dao soldiers behind as well. Besides, Jian Yi will stay back in Lineage of Star. If, during the time when I cultivate in Emperor Sword Palace, Lineage of Star has any problem, you should be able to deal with it with Jian Yi and the Dao soldiers. Jian Wushuang knew that 100 bronze-armored Dao soldiers was an extremely fierce fighting power. On top of that, Jian Yi's current power was slightly stronger than himself. With him attending garrison duty personally, Jian Wushuang wouldn't be worried when he cultivated in Emperor Sword Palace. After delegating tasks, Jian Wushuang headed to Emperor Sword Sect alone. Emperor Sword Sect wasn't within 10 cultivation sanctuaries but in the vast void near the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Jian Wushuang departed from Lineage of Star via space wormhole. It only took 10 years to reach the void where Emperor Sword Sect was. That's where Emperor Sword Sect is. Jian Wushuang stood in the void as he looked at the piece of floating land while he revealed a creepy smile. Chapter 1869 Emperor Sword Sect. In another few years' time, it will be the day where the Emperor Sword Palace opens again, and it is obvious that the Emperor Sword Sect has already made preparations for it. Since they knew that some people would come to visit them during this period of time, they actually sent a Sir God expert to welcome them? Jian Wushuang stroked his nose. He had already realized the existence of a white-haired old man in front of the entrance of the Emperor Sword Sect. This white-haired old man stood at his position like an old monk who was sitting in meditation, and he did not care about the normal disciples and experts who entered or left the Emperor Sword Sect in the slightest. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate either. His body turned vague and he walked forward. While walking, Jian Wushuang released a portion of his god power intentionally. Upon feeling the existence of the god power, the white-haired old man who was sitting in meditation opened his eyes immediately and looked in the direction of Jian Wushuang. I am Jianghu. I wonder which friend of ours has come to the Emperor Sword Sect? The white-haired old man's hearty voice reverberated across the area. Jianghu? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. In no time, his body stopped before Jianghu and came into view. As the distance between them got shorter, Jianghu felt the aura that Jian Wushuang emitted and his expression changed at once. When Jian Wushuang's body came into shape completely and when he saw his looks clearly, Jianghu frowned. So it's the famous Sword Emperor. Nice to meet you, Jianghu greeted Jian Wushuang to show his respect. Although Jian Wushuang was only a real god, his abilities were already displayed. Jianghu was merely a normal Sir God. As such, he naturally treated Jian Wushuang with respect. I have heard that the Emperor Sword Palace that your sect controls will open up after another period of time and I am here to pay a visit, Jian Wushuang laughed. As expected, he is here for the Emperor Sword Palace. Jianghu's heart felt heavy. The Emperor Sword Palace opening up soon was not a secret to begin with. Hence, during this period of time, quite a number of experts had paid a visit to the Emperor Sword Sect. Jian Wushuang was an expert who was proficient in sword principles. Hence, it was normal for him to pay a visit. However, there had been some episodes between the Emperor Sword Sect Master and the Lineage of Star Palace Master in the past. Sword Emperor, please wait a moment. Let me first relay a message to my sect master to tell him that you have come, Jianghu said. You have to first send him a message to ask him? Aren't you here especially to wait for the large number of experts who made their way here to pay a visit? Could it be that you cannot make up your mind? Or are you trying to say that the Emperor Sword Sect does not welcome me? Jian Wushuang looked at Tianguzi. How could I dare to do that? Tianguzi shook his head repeatedly and laughed. As Sword Emperor is a super existence who is ranked 22nd on the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, the Emperor Sword Sect will naturally be afraid of you if you come here personally. I am now sending a message to my palace master to allow him to make ample preparations to welcome you, Sword Emperor. Is that so? Jian Wushuang laughed jokingly and did not say much. Tianguzi sent the news of the arrival of Jian Wushuang to the Emperor Sword Sect master right away. In a giant palace at the core of the Emperor Sword Sect, there were figures which were emitting a large amount of aura sitting there. These people were all experts who had come to pay a visit before the Emperor Sword Palace opened. Moreover, most of these experts were proficient in sword principles. The Emperor Sword Palace was a place of opportunity which Sword Emperor Dugu from the First Era had left behind. At that moment, the greatest opportunity in the Emperor Sword Palace was the Sword Principle Inheritance. For the Sword Principle Inheritance, only people who possessed the Sword Principle Inheritance token had the right to obtain it. However, there were merely 5 inheritance tokens. Moreover, 2 of them had always been in the hands of the Emperor Sword Palace. In other words, there were only 3 Sword Principle Inheritance tokens that were circulating around the outside world. Every time the Emperor Sword Palace opened, only 3 experts from the outside world could go deep into the Emperor Sword Palace. However, there were some small opportunities for sword principles in the Emperor Sword Palace. Hence, they were still attractive to quite a number of experts who were proficient in sword principles. Therefore, even though they did not possess Sword Principle Inheritance tokens, every time the Emperor Sword Palace opened, some experts would go out of their way to come over. The person who sat at the highest point of the hall was a red-robed man with dashing eyebrows. He was the Emperor Sword Sect Master. However, at that moment, he was holding on to a wine cup and chatting with a purple-clothed woman who was before a long narrow table. I did not expect that the Emperor Sword Palace's opening this time around could actually get you, Luo Shenzi, to come personally as well. My Emperor Sword Sect is really honored by your presence. The Emperor Sword Sect Master purred, and his words were filled with the intention to earn her favor. However, the purple-clothed woman's expression was extremely cold, and she merely used a few words to barely deal with the Emperor Sword Sect Master's words. The Emperor Sword Sect Master was not upset in the slightest. After all, he knew what kind of temper Luo Shenzi had. Just then, from outside the entrance of the sect, Tianguzi's message came. What, Sword Emperor? The Emperor Sword Sect Master's expression changed and he could not help but murmur, this Sword Emperor has actually come as well? There were no grudges between him and Jian Wushuang. Moreover, there were no big episodes between the Emperor Sword Sect and the lineage of Star either. However, he had once suffered big losses in the hands of the Star Palace Master. As such, he still harbored some hatred toward the Star Palace Master. Thus, it was difficult for him to not vent his anger on the experts of the lineage of Star. Hence, with regards to Jian Wushuang, he did not really welcome him. Everyone who comes is a guest. Since he has come, please let him in, the Emperor Sword Sect Master messaged Tianguzi. In no time, Tianguzi led Jian Wushuang to the palace. The moment Jian Wushuang appeared, the large number of experts in the palace who were originally chatting and drinking quietened down right away. At that moment, all their eyes were locked onto Jian Wushuang. Without even needing Tianguzi or the Emperor Sword Sect Master to introduce him, all those experts already recognized him. As they had recognized Jian Wushuang's identity, the atmosphere in the palace became silent instantly. A mighty name was a good shelter. In the eternal chaotic world, Jian Wushuang's fierce name was too great. In particular, within the recent thousands of years, it was unknown as to how many almighties had died at his hands, and even a good number of emperor gods had died at his hands as well. As for the 10 over experts present, although all of them were almighties apart from Luo Shenzi, no one could remain calm when they looked at Jian Wushuang. Moreover, there were a few people who felt terrified when they saw Jian Wushuang. For these people, the sects that they were in had huge grudges against the lineage of Star. Hence, when they saw Jian Wushuang, a murderous god, it was difficult for them to not feel fearful. After all, if Jian Wushuang were to go crazy and attack them, they would be doomed. However, fortunately, after Jian Wushuang entered the palace, he did not care about those people at all. Instead, his eyes locked onto Luo Shenzi right away. I did not expect her to be here as well? Jian Wushuang was surprised. With regards to Luo Shenzi, Jian Wushuang had never had any dealings with her before and he had not seen her before. However, with regards to Luo Xianz's abilities, Jian Wushuang knew about them well. Peak Emperor God. Moreover, she was ranked 21st in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, which was right above him. Chapter 1870 deliberately made things difficult. Just as Jian Wushuang looked at Louis Shenzi, she looked at Jian Wushuang as well. In her cold eyes, there was a flash of surprise, but it disappeared very quickly. It's an honor to receive Sword Emperor. Please forgive me for not traveling far to welcome you, Emperor Sword Sect Master said. Although he wanted Emperor Sword to forgive him, he spoke highly of himself and stayed seated and never stood when he was talking to Jian Wushuang, who was a more powerful figure. It was obvious that he didn't care about Jian Wushuang. I'm only a junior. How could I make Emperor Sword Sect Master welcome me personally? Jian Wushuang smiled and wasn't bothered. I heard that Sword Emperor is decisive in killing people. Whoever offends you will end miserably. But from what it seems, you aren't behaving as the rumors say. Sword Emperor is quite a friendly person, Emperor Sword Sect Master said with a smile. Friendly? Jian Wushuang smiled but didn't say anything more. Sword Emperor, I wonder why you came to Emperor Sword Sect today? Emperor Sword Sect Master finally asked. Emperor Sword Palace is going to open. I came here of course for Emperor Sword Palace's Sword Principal Inheritance Token. This is my Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Jian Wushuang took out his Sword Principal Inheritance Token. The moment the surrounding experts saw the Sword Principal Inheritance Token, they were surprised. Emperor Sword Sect Master saw it and he creased his eyebrows. He knew that Jian Wushuang had come for Emperor Sword Palace, but he hadn't known that Jian Wushuang had a Sword Principal Inheritance Token. The Sword Principal Inheritance Token was hard to get. Among the Almighties there, only Luo Xianzi had a Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Everyone else didn't have one. Emperor Sword Sect Master, I heard that I can enter Emperor Sword Palace to receive Sword Principal as long as I have Sword Principal Inheritance Token. I wonder if it's true? Jian Wushuang asked. Sword Emperor, don't worry. Emperor Sword Sect Master smiled. Sword Principal Inheritance Token is the only proof to enter Emperor Sword Palace and receive Sword Principal. This is true. However, over the years, Emperor Sword Palace has been opened many times and the appearance of Sword Principal Inheritance Token is well known to the public. Naturally, there are many people with wicked intentions who forged the Sword Principal Inheritance Token. The outer appearance and the aura are the same as the real one, but in actual fact, it might be an imitation. Emperor Sword Sect Master, what you're saying is that the Sword Principal Inheritance Token in my hand is fake. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. The surrounding people gasped a breath of cold air and thought that Emperor Sword Sect Master had the guts to say nonsense. There were genuine and imitated Sword Principal Inheritance Tokens, that was true. However, firstly, forgery of Sword Principal Inheritance Token was very rare. Secondly, even if it was really forgery, it would at most be circulated in Eternal Chaotic World and be sold to people who didn't know what it was at a high price. In other words, people who had more money than sense. Who would come to Emperor Sword Sect with a forged Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Everyone knew that Emperor Sword Sect could differentiate true or false Sword Principal Inheritance Tokens. Under such circumstances, weren't those who brought forged tokens asking to be snubbed? Besides, if it was a universe god or real god who took out Sword Principal Inheritance Token, it might be a forged one. However, the one who had taken out the Sword Principal Inheritance Token was Jian Wushuang. How could Sword Emperor take out a forged item? It was impossible, but Emperor Sword Sect Master had said so. It was obvious that he wanted to deliberately make it difficult for Jian Wushuang. Emperor Sword Sect Master chuckled when he noticed Jian Wushuang's change of expression. Sword Emperor, don't misunderstand me. I didn't say that the Sword Principal Inheritance Token that you brought is fake, but Emperor Sword Palace only opens once every 1 million years and there is a limited quota. It's best to be more careful. You're right, Jian Wushuang looked calm. No one could guess his feelings. If so, Emperor Sword Sect Master shall determine the authenticity of the Sword Principal Inheritance Token personally. Then Jian Wushuang threw the Sword Principal Inheritance Token in his hand to Emperor Sword Sect Master. Emperor Sword Sect Master caught it and spread his palm. He didn't need to probe as he already knew that the Sword Principal Inheritance Token was real. He had done it with the intention to make it difficult for Jian Wushuang, but he didn't expect Jian Wushuang to give him the Sword Principal Inheritance Token directly. Wouldn't Jian Wushuang be worried that he would pull some tricks on Sword Principal Inheritance Token so it would become fake? Sword Emperor Sword Principal Inheritance Token is true. Emperor Sword Sect Master chuckled and he passed Sword Principal Inheritance Token back to Jian Wushuang. As you have checked the authenticity of the token, can I enter Sword Emperor Palace now? Jian Wushuang asked coldly. Yes, of course. But Sword Emperor should know that Emperor Sword Palace is controlled by Emperor Sword Sect as well. Among the 5 Sword Principal Inheritance Tokens, There are 3 tokens that Emperor Sword Sect took the initiative to distribute, including the one in Sword Emperor's hand. Since Emperor Sword Sect has offered such a great opportunity, we of course expect things in return. Emperor Sword Sect Master squinted his eyes and smiled at Jianghu Shuang. Of course I know that. I wonder what is the price that Emperor Sword Sect Master would like me to pay? Jianghu Shuang looked calm. There was no free lunch in the world. Jianghu Shuang knew that concept really well. Emperor Sword Sect controlled Emperor Sword Palace and they took the initiative to send out Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Their purpose of doing so was to receive sufficient benefits. The experts who had visited Emperor Sword Sect, even those who didn't have Sword Principal Inheritance Tokens but could receive meager Sword Principals, had to pay a price too. Emperor Sword Sect isn't asking for much. To Sword Emperor it is nothing. 3 attack divine weapons and 1 defense armor. Emperor Sword Sect Master smiled. That simple? Jianghu Shuang lifted his head to look at Emperor Sword Sect Master. He flipped his hand and took out 3 Real God Limited Chaotic Unique Treasure Level Divine Weapons and a Real God Limited Chaotic Unique Treasure Level Defense Armor. I wonder if Emperor Sword Sect Master is happy with these items? Jianghu Shuang asked. Real God Limited Chaotic Unique Treasure was valuable too. The total of 4 treasures should be worth more than 30,000 Doctrine Gems. It was already considered a costly price. However, Emperor Sword Sect Master looked at the 3 divine weapons and set of armor in disdain and said, I think Sword Emperor misunderstood me. The divine weapon and armor that I mentioned aren't unique treasures but chaotic divine treasures. What? Everyone in the hall was shocked. Jianghu Shuang's eyes dilated in shock when he heard what Emperor Sword Sect Master said. Chapter 1871 Follow. Chaos Divine Treasure? The Emperor Sword Sect Master had demanded 3 divine weapons and 1 defense armor. However, all of them had to be Chaos Divine Treasures? Upon hearing that, the first thought that the large number of experts present had was that the Emperor Sword Sect Master was crazy. They were Chaos Divine Treasures. Even the most normal attack-type divine weapons were enough to cause many Emperor gods to cast their covetous eyes on it or even go crazy for it. After all, most of the weaker Emperor gods did not possess a single Chaos Divine Treasure, and one such example was Emperor God Shenwu. Let alone a defense armor which was more valuable than attack-type divine weapons. It was just to enter the Emperor Sword Palace and Jianghu Shuang possessed the Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Under such circumstances, the Emperor Sword Sect Master still demanded such an unbelievable price from him. He was indeed crazy. However, upon thinking about the words that the Emperor Sword Sect Master had just said, in that it was possible for the Sword Principal Inheritance Token that Jianghu Shuang had taken out to be an imitation, everyone present understood. All of them knew that the Emperor Sword Sect Master was making things difficult for Jianghu Shuang on purpose. As for the 3 Chaos Divine Treasure level attack-type weapons and 1 defense armor, it was said by him randomly and even he himself knew that it was impossible. Emperor Sword Sect Master, I am probably not the only one who has come here with the Sword Principal Inheritance Token. I wonder what is the price that the rest of them paid? Jianghu Shuang questioned indifferently. Apart from you, Luo Xinzi came with a Sword Principal Inheritance Token. As for the price that she paid, its worth was naturally not less than yours, the Emperor Sword Sect Master laughed. Is that so? Jianghu Shuang could not help but glance at Luo Xinzi. However, it was a pity that Luo Xinzi still looked ice-cold and she did not say anything. Looks like this trip of mine was wasted, Jianghu Shuang laughed apathetically. Sword Emperor, since you are unable to pay the price, I'm sorry but you have to leave. Alright, before you leave you have to leave the Sword Principal Inheritance Token behind. It just so happens that this time around, my Emperor Sword Sect has a new genius real god. Hence, it will be appropriate to give him this Sword Principal Inheritance Token, Emperor Sword Sect Master said dully and his words were filled with ridicule. What a pity, Jianghu Shuang sighed lightly and he seemed to be unable to do anything. However, all of a sudden Jianghu Shuang raised his head again and he wore a joking smile. Emperor Sword Sect Master, let's change the conditions. Change the conditions? How will we change it? The Emperor Sword Sect Master looked over. Let's forget about the 3 Chaos Divine Treasure level attack-type divine weapons and defense armor. Instead, let me use the lives of the large number of disciples and experts of your Emperor Sword Sect in exchange for my right to enter the Emperor Sword Sect. What do you think? Jianghu Shuang said randomly. As soon as his words left his mouth, the whole palace froze instantly. The large number of experts in the palace opened their eyes wide and they had shocked expressions. Using the lives of the large number of disciples and experts of the Emperor Sword Sect to exchange for his right to enter? The meaning behind Jianghu Shuang's words? Sword Emperor, may I know what you are trying to say? The Emperor Sword Sect Master's expression turned cold and gloomy. What I am trying to say. Could it be that the Emperor Sword Sect Master really does not understand? Jian Wushuang laughed. Before I came, I heard that there was an episode between you and my palace master in the past. Hence, I had already expected you to make things difficult for me on purpose. Originally, I planned to allow you to make things difficult for me. After all, your Emperor Sword Sect is the one who is in control of Emperor Sword Palace. As long as you do not overdo it on the account of Sword Emperor Dugu, it will be alright even if I were to suffer losses. However, it's a pity that you are too stupid. You are too arrogant. Jian Wushuang's voice resounded within the palace slowly, and the hearts of the large number of experts from the Emperor Sword Sect twitched. They had a bad feeling. At the next moment, what they expected really happened. All of a sudden, frightening god power burst forth from Jian Wushuang's body, and it was accompanied by an extremely powerful sword essence which wanted to tear the vault of heaven apart. The god power covered the Emperor Sword Sect instantly. Under the god power and sword essence, it was still all right for those almighties in the palace. However, as for some of the real gods of the Emperor Sword Sect who stayed in the palace, as well as the large number of disciples of the Emperor Sword Sect who were outside the palace, most of them knelt down instantly. As for those people who were close to Jian Wushuang, blood flowed out of their ears, noses and mouths. Such a scene caused the Emperor Sword Sect Master expression to change greatly. Jian Wushuang, please stop this. With a loud cry, an extremely powerful aura rose from the Emperor Sword Sect Master's body. Two frightening auras then clashed head-on in the palace, boom. Under the attack of the two auras, the whole palace was smashed into pieces at once. The large number of experts inside the palace rose in succession. A large number of experts appeared at the void, and at the same time, swoosh, 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 swoosh. A few figures flew over in succession from the surrounding. They were some of the almighties of the Emperor Sword Sect. Although the Emperor Sword Sect was not as powerful as the Abysmal Palace and Soaring Heaven King Palace, it was extremely old and it had a great foundation. On top of that, they were in control of the Emperor Sword Palace, a place that was rich in resources. Furthermore, they had a large number of experts. They had a total of 7 almighties. However, among them, the Emperor Sword Sect Master was the only Emperor God. Just then, the 7 almighties, which included Emperor Sword Sect Master, were standing together, and they were looking at Jian Wushuang with anger. As for the experts who had come for the Emperor Sword Palace, all of them stood to the side, and it was obvious that they did not want to be involved. Jian Wushuang, what are you trying to do? The Emperor Sword Sect Master's face was filled with fury. Jian Wushuang's suppression with his divine power previously had merely caused the consciousness of the disciples inside the Emperor Sword Sect to take some damage, and no one had any serious injuries. However, Jian Wushuang's actions were the same as hitting the face of the Emperor Sword Sect. What am I trying to do? Could it be that the Emperor Sword Sect Master has not guessed yet? Jian Wushuang sneered. I have already said that this sect master of yours is too stupid. In actual fact, the moment I came to your Emperor Sword Sect, you should have treated me with respect. Not to mention making things difficult for me. If it were a sect master who was more sensible, he would probably be extremely modest, and he would not get me to pay any price to enter the Emperor Sword Palace. Moreover, he might even think of ways to make friends with me. As he is certain of one thing. Not to mention the fact that I possessed the Sword Principal Inheritance Token. Even if I did not have it, with my abilities, I would still be able to enter the Emperor Sword Palace easily without much effort. But you, No wonder even though the Emperor Sword Sect possessed the Emperor Sword Palace, which is rich in resources, it is still unable to come up on top in terms of ranking among the large number of big powerhouses in the Sanctuary Alliance. Jian Wushuang sneered, and this caused Emperor Sword Sect Master to have an even uglier expression. How impudent. Jian Wushuang, don't forget that you are now in my Emperor Sword Sect and you are not in your lineage of star, the Emperor Sword Sect Master said with flames of fury. Is that so? Jian Wushuang shook his head and laughed. You still do not understand. Be it the lineage of star or the Emperor Sword Sect, to me, aren't both of them the same? As soon as his words left his mouth, Jian Wushuang's body moved. In the Emperor Sword Sect, the base of the Emperor Sword Sect, Jian Wushuang commenced his attack. Chapter 1872 One Person Suppressing One Sect Part 1. A fierce blowing sound was heard and the void instantly exploded. The moment they saw Jian Wushuang take action, Emperor Sword Sect, a total of 7 almighties including Emperor Sword Sect Master, looked shocked. Although they were 7 almighties, they were dealing with a true decision then. Reincarnation Palm. Jian Wushuang's billowing divine power concentrated in collaboration with the power of ancient tribe bloodline, under the cover of reincarnation power. Virum. A huge palm that seemed to contain the entire reincarnation doctrine swept out. The moment the palm was pushed out, the universe changed its color. The palm engulfed the 7 people, including Emperor Sword Sect Master. Jian Wushuang was obviously going to fight the 7 alone. You have guts. Emperor Sword Sect Master immediately roared. As his voice reverberated in the sky, a boundless sword intention soared up from his body. Although Emperor Sword Sect Master was stupid, he was quite powerful. He was a true peak Emperor God after all. Then there was a spear with a green luster that gave out faint gold lightning in his hands. His might instantly increased. Break. As Emperor Sword Sect Master spat one word, the spear instantly brought about boundless golden lightning and stabbed. It pierced the reincarnation palm. Walala. Boundless divine power dispersed to the surrounding and Emperor Sword Sect Master's figure shuttled through the reincarnation palm. His gaze was cold as he glared at Jian Wushuang. Sword formation. The 6 Almighties from Emperor Sword Sect quickly exploded their soaring sword intentions when they heard Emperor Sword Sect Master's command. The 6 Almighty sword intentions resonated and instantly formed a huge sword formation. Emperor Sword Sect focused on swords and their sword formation was extremely famous too. Then what the 6 Almighties had performed was 6 sword formation. It was the strongest sword formation that combined both attacks and defense as one. The sword formation performed by 6 Sir Gods altogether was even more powerful. Die. The moment the sword formation took place, the 6 Almighties glared coldly and suddenly drove the formation at Jian Wushuang. Similarly, 6 sword formation attacked too. Jian Wushuang looked at everything in front of him calmly. On the finger on his right hand, there was billowing divine power gathering. Ancient God's 7th finger, Vault of Heaven's finger. Hong. A terrifying spacetime whirlpool that covered hundreds of thousands of miles appeared in the air. The whirlpool strangled everything in the universe to death. For instance, the palaces in Emperor Sword Sect shattered into pieces. Luckily, the real gods and universe gods from Emperor Sword Sect retreated to a faraway place so that they weren't affected. Otherwise, the spacetime whirlpool itself would be sufficient to turn Emperor Sword Sect into bloodbath. Then, there was a huge finger in a black jade color that extended from the whirlpool. The huge finger was boundless and it pointed to the void in front with terrifying power. 6 sword matches, life-destroying sword out. Among the 6 Almighties from Emperor Sword Sect, one of them shouted and the 6 terrifying sword intentions merged. Rumble. A huge sword that gave out a boundless gleam substantiated and the huge sword swung down under the trigger of the formation. Bang. Both collided and the void suddenly became quiet. In a short while, both the huge black and jade-colored finger and the huge sword that gave out a boundless gleam collapsed. Oh. Jian Wushuang looked shocked. He utilized his divine power and ancient tribe bloodline to perform Ancient God's 7th finger, Vault of Heaven's finger. In the end, the 6 Almighties had withstood it with their sword formation? That's interesting, Jian Wushuang smiled. Die. A sharp sword intention that seemed to be able to tear everything suddenly exploded from Jian Wushuang. Emperor Sword Sect Master appeared next to Jian Wushuang and wielded his spear with faint lightning. Sword light attacked and brought about the surrounding spacetime and sword intention that signified that it stops at nothing until it killed its enemy. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Blood Mountain sword was drawn from the scabbard and wielded his sword. Dang. There was a low clashing noise. Emperor Sword Sect Master was a peak Emperor God after all. Although his ranking wasn't as high as Fortress Master Hong Tian's on the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, who had died, he wasn't weak. Jian Wushuang was in a hurry to withstand the sudden stroke and he inevitably took a few steps back. Emperor Sword Sect Master saw that and he gained confidence. Jian Wushuang, you're courting death yourself. You dare to attack an Emperor Sword Sect? Even if I kill you here today, there is definitely no one who will comment much. Kill me here? Emperor Sword Sect Master, you have some guts. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but sneer. The surrounding Almighties who were watching the fight turned up their noises at what Emperor Sword Sect Master had said. Jian Wushuang was on the 22nd place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. As such a superb existence, only great emperors or the top among emperor gods, underworld gods, would be confident in winning against Jian Wushuang. Emperor Sword Sect Master was merely at the bottom of all peak emperor gods, but he wanted to kill Jian Wushuang. Even if he was in Emperor Sword Sect and he had the assistance of the other 6 Almighties, they could at most fight evenly with Jian Wushuang. Kill Jian Wushuang. The people at the scene wanted to ask Emperor Sword Sect Master where his courage came from. Emperor Sword Sect is pitiful to have you as their sect master. Jian Wushuang sneered, and there was faint chilly gleam in his eyes. Virum. 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 3 golden lights suddenly soared up. The 3 golden lights were glorious like 3 golden suns. They were Jian Wushuang's Hongjun golden swords. Golden swords. It's Sword Emperor's famous golden swords. The moment the golden swords are out, it means that Sword Emperor is going all out. The surrounding experts who were watching gasped as they held their breath and watched. Jian Wushuang didn't speak anymore, but the 3 Hongjun golden swords quivered and instantly shot out. The 3 golden lights flashed past like fish in a pond. The 3 golden lights bypassed Emperor Sword Sect Master and instantly appeared in front of the 6 Almighties. The 6 Almighties immediately responded. Be careful. Activate the formation to block the 3 golden swords. Virum. A fierce sword intention exploded and the 6 Almighties followed his command. Jian Wushuang saw and smiled in disdain. Did it work? Dang. 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 3 continuous thuds and the 3 Hongyun golden swords backed off and instantly plunged out again. The second attack. Chapter 1873 One Person Suppressing One Sect Part 2. Clang. Clang. This time around, 2 clashing sounds could be heard. As for the remaining golden sword, it struck the chest of one of the Almighties without any hindrance. Although this Almighty's defense was not weak, while facing the attack by the golden sword, he still spit out a mouthful of blood. His aura decreased instantly and his body was sent flying like a cannonball. Although he did not die straight away, he no longer had any fighting capabilities. As for the 6 sword formation, with the loss of one Almighty, the whole sword formation fell apart. Jian Wushuang's 3 Hongjun golden swords then attacked in succession. As the Sir Gods faced the Hongjun golden swords alone, they absolutely did not have the ability to block them. Buff, 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 buff. 5 sounds of a person spitting blood could be heard at the same time. In just 2 face-offs, all the 6 Almighties had been seriously injured. Not good. Upon seeing that, the Emperor Sword Sect Master's expression changed greatly. However, the speed of the Hongjun golden swords was too fast and he had no way to stop them. Hence, he could only look on as the Hongjun golden swords dealt fatal blows to the 6 Almighties. Humph, the power and defense of the 6 sword formation is indeed not too bad. However, it's a pity that this sword formation required the 6 of them to activate it at the same time. Moreover, when activating it, the divine power and sword essence of the 6 of them needed to resonate with one another. Although this process would only take an instant, this instant was a weak point to my Hongjun golden swords, Jian Wushuang sneered. The most frightening thing about the Hongjun golden swords was their speed. He was controlling 3 Hongjun golden swords to attack at the same time. During the first attack, the 6 Almighties were still able to react in time and activate the Great Formation to block it. However, after blocking the attack, the Hongjun golden swords could continue to launch a second attack in close proximity and there would not be any breaks in between the attacks. Since the 6 Almighties of the Emperor Sword Sect had just activated the sword formation to block the first attack, they would need to activate the formation at the same time again if they wanted to block the attack a second time. In terms of speed, this was naturally a lot slower. Hence, this had allowed the Hongjun golden swords to find an opportunity to destroy the sword formation, and in no time, they dealt serious blows to the 6 Almighties. Moreover, the Emperor Sword Sect Master was unable to react in time. Furthermore, if Jian Wushuang wanted to, he could absolutely kill all the 6 Almighties at that instant. Emperor Sword Sect Master, it's your turn now. Jian Wushuang had a cold expression. After dealing serious blows to the 6 Almighties, his eyes looked in the direction of the Emperor Sword Sect Master. Bus, bus, bus. The 3 Hongjun golden swords shook slightly and were shot out instantly. Upon seeing the 3 brilliant rays of golden light which had appeared in front of him, the Emperor Sword Sect Master revealed a furious expression. He then unleashed his sword principles in succession while roaring with the intention to stop the 3 Hongjun golden swords. However, he did not notice that the experts who were observing the battle by the side had already revealed sympathetic expressions. What a joke. Jian Wushuang's Hongjun golden swords were famous for being frightening. Even though he had only used 3 of them, they were still extremely powerful. Back then, when Palace Master Wu Luo, who was ranked 25 in the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, had faced the 3 Hongyun golden swords that Jian Wushuang controlled with his full power, he had only managed to block them with a lot of difficulty. The moment Jian Wushuang had activated the 4th one, he was completely defeated. Comparing both the Emperor Sword Sect Master and Palace Master Wu Luo, they were at completely different levels. As expected, The three Hongjun golden swords merely attacked a few times, and its great amount of power sent the sword that the Emperor Sword Sect Master was holding in his hands flying right away. Although the Emperor Sword Sect Master had done his best, to the point where it could be said that he had used all his tricks other than soul burn, he was still completely defeated by the three Hongjun golden swords. Bam! 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 The three Hongjun golden swords struck the Emperor Sword Sect Master's body in succession. As the Emperor Sword Sect had a great foundation, the Emperor Sword Sect Master possessed a Chaos Divine Treasure level defense armor. However, after being struck by the three Hongjun golden swords head-on, he still could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood, and his expression turned pale. Jian Wushuang waved his hands lightly, and the three Hongjun golden swords did not continue their attacks. Instead, they returned to Jian Wushuang's front. Such a scene had caused the large number of experts who were observing the battle by the side to become silent. In their hearts, they were sighing lightly. As expected of the Sword Emperor. He is too powerful. This time around, in just a short amount of time, a lineup that was formed by the Emperor Sword Sect Master, as well as the 6 Almighties of the Emperor Sword Sect, were defeated instantly. How powerful. The Sword Emperor has only used 3 golden swords. All of them could not help but gasp. With him alone, he had defeated the large number of Almighties in the Emperor Sword Sect and given them serious injuries. Moreover, they could tell that Jian Wushuang had shown them mercy. If not, these Almighties would definitely not get off so lightly with serious injuries. One person suppressing one sect. This is a typical example of one person suppressing one sect. A Sir God who was observing the battle could not help but murmur. One person suppressing one sect? The other people gasped in admiration. In the eternal chaotic world, abilities represented respect. As long as one was powerful enough, situations where one person suppressed the whole sect of the other party could be found everywhere. However, just then Jian Wushuang had used his own power to suppress the Emperor Sword Sect, a big powerhouse in the Sanctuary Alliance. The Emperor Sword Sect, which was old and had a great foundation, had actually been suppressed by Jian Wushuang alone. Emperor Sword Sect Master, are you happy now? Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and he was looking down at the Emperor Sword Sect Master, whose expression was ghastly pale. Happy? Jian Wushuang, do you think that by relying on your own powerful abilities, you will be able to do what you want? Don't forget that my Emperor Sword Sect is a member of the Sanctuary Alliance. During the long years, my Emperor Sword Sect has contributed greatly to the Sanctuary Alliance. Moreover, on the outside, many people owed my Emperor Sword Sect favors. For example, there are no less than 3 Emperor Gods who are good friends with my Emperor Sword Sect. If you were to be reckless, the Sanctuary Alliance would definitely not let you off. As for those Almighties who are good friends with my Emperor Sword Sect, they would definitely not let you off either. Emperor Sword Sect Master shouted with a heavy voice. Upon hearing that, the experts who were observing the battle by the side opened their eyes wide. Eyes that were filled with astonishment then looked in the direction of the Emperor Sword Sect Master. They were not shocked with regards to the contributions and favors that the Emperor Sword Sect Master had mentioned. As the Emperor Sword Sect was old with a great foundation, they would have definitely contributed greatly to the Sanctuary Alliance and made friends with quite a number of experts. As such, they were not surprised. What they were really astonished about was the Emperor Sword Sect Master's stupidity. Was he not aware of the situation that was in front of him? Or did he have no idea who he was facing? It was the Sword Emperor, who was known for his fierce name. A genuine, murderous god, a malignant star. He really thought that this murderous god would not dare to go on a killing spree? As expected. After the Emperor Sword Sect Master had finished talking, Jian Wushuang's eyes turned completely ice-cold. In the next moment his body moved. As if it were teleportation, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of one of the Sir Gods of the Emperor Sword Sect. Moreover, he had already extended one of his big hands like tongs. This Sir God's expression then changed greatly. However, as the gap between their abilities was too huge and he had already been seriously injured by Jian Wushuang's Hongjun golden swords, which had caused him to not have much fighting capabilities left, he had no way of fighting back. Chapter 1874 Drowning Disaster. Wow. Jian Wushuang's hand grabbed the Sir God's neck as though he was lifting up a chick. He moved and returned to his original position. In the void, Jian Wushuang's face was cold. He held the Sir God and humphed coldly. Before Emperor Sword Sect Master's gaze, Jian Wushuang exerted strength in his grip. Bang! The Sir God's head exploded from Jian Wushuang's grip. The Sir God expert instantly died. What? The remaining few Sir Gods from Emperor Sword Sect came back to reality and they were in shock. Emperor Sword Sect Master instantly became furious. Jian Wushuang, how dare you, idiot! Jian Wushuang roared and cut off Emperor Sword Sect Master. He was then soaring with murderous intention and his gaze was extremely cold. Emperor Sword Sect Master, if you say anything more, I will slaughter the entire Emperor Sword Sect. Emperor Sword Sect Master quivered. The 5 remaining Sir Gods from Emperor Sword Sect had their eyes wide open. The surrounding experts who were watching the fight looked at Sword Emperor Sect Master in ridicule. They knew that Jian Wushuang was not a person that one should offend, but Emperor Sword Sect Master wanted to believe in himself infallibly instead. It was true that Emperor Sword Sect had contributed greatly to Sanctuary Alliance and they were friends with many experts in Sanctuary Alliance. However, these things were merely things on the outside. What was the most important thing in this world? It wasn't assistance from the outside but one's power. One's power was the true foundation. Jian Wushuang had believed in that all his life. So what if Emperor Sword Sect were friends with experts? If Jian Wushuang were to slaughter everyone in Emperor Sword Sect and destroy the sect, how much would the friendship cost? Among the Almighties that were his friends, how many of them are willing to take revenge on Jian Wushuang for Emperor Sword Sect that had been destroyed? There should be very few. Even if there were, what could they do to Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing. If it was any other period of time and Emperor Sword Sect had made it difficult for him over and over again, Jian Wushuang would have started a massacre and kill everyone in Emperor Sword Sect. It was unnecessary trouble. Then Lineage of Star was at the heart of the struggle. Emperor Sword Sect was a major force, their foundation was solid and they were associated with many. Hence, unless it was necessary, Jian Wushuang wasn't willing to tear it apart. Even if he was forced to attack, he wouldn't exactly attack with full force. Otherwise, during the fight earlier, how many of the Almighties from Emperor Sword Sect would still be alive? He believed that he had tolerated enough. He had never expected Emperor Sword Sect Master to push to the current situation. After all, Lineage of Star is eyed by all forces, Emperor Sword Sect is just one extra. Jian Wushuang had already made a decision then. If Emperor Sword Sect Master were to say another word, he would instantly attack and kill all experts from Emperor Sword Sect in prevention of future trouble. The experts from Emperor Sword Sect could feel Jian Wushuang's billowing murderous intention and his determination. They knew that Jian Wushuang wasn't joking. He had guts and he definitely had the capability to destroy Emperor Sword Sect on the spot. Emperor Sword Sect Master was dumbfounded. Because he had had a conflict with the Master of Star Palace before, he was upset and he wanted to deliberately make it difficult for Jian Wushuang. He had never thought to have a fight with Jian Wushuang. After all, he had heard of Jian Wushuang's power and bad name. However, he had never expected that Jian Wushuang would come to Emperor Sword Palace and would behave so humbly and courteously with him. To the point where he had thought Jian Wushuang wasn't as scary as rumor said. Hence, he had made it more and more difficult for Jian Wushuang. In the end, he had even had the thought of not letting Jian Wushuang enter Emperor Sword Palace and forcing him to leave. But he had never expected this outcome. In other words, because of his thoughts, a Sir God from Emperor Sword Sect had died and the entire Emperor Sword Sect was on the brink of death. His one sentence or one action could possibly bring Emperor Sword Sect to a drowning disaster. Then he only had 2 options. Either he continued to behave stubbornly and watch Emperor Sword Sect be destroyed by Jian Wushuang. After that, Sanctuary Alliance and those experts who were friends with Emperor Sword Sect would definitely take revenge for Emperor Sword Sect, but he and the experts from Emperor Sword Sect would definitely be dead. Or he would lower his head and yield to Jian Wushuang. Aye. Emperor Sword Sect Master muttered as he struggled in his head. However, as he struggled in his head, there was a figure that walked out of the crowd of experts who were watching the fight. The moment the person walked out, she immediately caught everyone's attention. Luo Xinzi. It's Luo Xinzi. She walked out from the crowd. Is she going to help Emperor Sword Sect? Very possibly. Emperor Sword Sect promised to let Luo Xinzi enter Emperor Sword Palace. It is considered a favor to Luo Xinzi. She won't watch as Jian Wushuang presses Emperor Sword Sect into a corner. The surrounding experts discussed among themselves. The people from Emperor Sword Sect became excited. They were looking at Luo Xinzi as their final life-saving straw. As for Jian Wushuang, he squinted his eyes when he saw Luo Xinzi walked out. He said, Luo Xinzi, are you trying to get involved? Today, Emperor Sword Sect did make it difficult for you at first, but Sword Emperor has already killed a Sir God from Emperor Sword Sect. It is already a heavy lesson to Emperor Sword Sect. It should be enough. Hence, I'd like to be a mediator. I hope both parties can just stop here. What do you think? Want me to stop? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. I can, But Emperor Sword Sect must apologize to me and they must give me 1,000,000 doctrine gems as a gift of apology. Then he'll let this slip. What Jianwu Shuang said stirred a commotion at the scene. The few people from Emperor Sword Sect, including Emperor Sword Sect Master, looked embarrassed. To apologize to Jianwu Shuang? Although they had made it difficult first, Jianwu Shuang had already killed their Sir Gods and injured them. They had already suffered a great loss. Then they had to apologize? And also the gift of 1,000,000 doctrine gems. 1,000,000 doctrine gems, it was all a Sir God was worth. Why are you unwilling to? Jianwu Shuang continued to look cold. Sword Emperor, Luo Xinzi spoke again, why don't we make a bet? Make a bet? Jianwu Shuang looked at Luo Xinzi, how? You and I are listed on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. One at the 21st place and one at the 22nd place. We are close in ranking and we are both good with swords. As we have met today, why don't we have a battle? Luo Xinzi smiled. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.